This sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Blessed good afternoon to everyone. I wish to thank God first, Mr. Speaker, for the privilege to be here today in good health, and of course to be the Member of Parliament for St. Thomas, where people have reposed their confidence in me more than 6 consecutive elections. I am thankful for this Barbados Labour Party for having taken over the reins of this country, but we could not do it without the support of the residents across the length and breadth of Barbados, under the astute leadership of none other than our great Prime Minister, who told us in Barbados, give me the vote and watch me. And certainly, she has been put under a microscope. We have watched her, given her the vote, watched her, and we are reaping the dividends of the visionary components of what she and this team, Barbados Labour Party, have offered to the people of Barbados. And by extension, Mr. Speaker, sir, the people of the Caribbean and the rest of the world admire her as one of the most outstanding women in the world. And I think that is extremely an excellent point where for our society over the many years, we have always had it as a patriarchal society. The men were the ones in charge. And the women, of course, would have been nurtured by those men as well. And the women helping to nurture the men. And now we have a brilliant Prime Minister who is acknowledged across the length and the breadth of the world. And she has been given that kind of respect that is due, not only to her brilliance, Mr. Speaker, sir, but to her countenance, her understanding, her nurturing and mentoring of people across this length and breadth of Barbados and the world. And so I am proud this evening to have been given the privilege to be a part of this distinguished Barbados Labour Party government, to be able to carry the people of Barbados from one level to the next. Now, I know, sir, that many of our previous leaders and representatives as well, from way back, had the focus of putting Barbados first. And in the light that she now is the very first female, it makes that tremendous difference. And it gives us, the females and our young girls, the opportunity to understand you can be an outstanding leader too. We can rub shoulders with the males, but we are all important in God's sight. And so today I am grateful for the privilege. I also want, Mr. Speaker, to say that we have had many outstanding leaders for many decades on both sides of the political fence. But this is the first time in my life, Mr. Speaker, that I have ever seen a leader of the opposition behave in the manner that we have witnessed only a few days ago. I know that the opposition leaders, sir, always get equal time to whoever is the Prime Minister or the presenter. And I want to thank the Honourable Member who did that presentation, a young, bright guy, sir, and you know, the up and on, former student, and I know the Attorney General is smiling as well, and now my grandson is smiling too because he has had an opportunity to go to up and on. But however, be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, I think it is really very important that we who are members of Parliament and leaders in this society, whether it be in the schools, the constabulary, wherever we are, measure of authority, because I'm the second oldest person in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for St. Michael East is a little ahead of me, not by too much. But if he and I don't set the examples, how can these other young distinguished members in this honourable chamber continue to do what they have to do? How can those other young people out there in the rest of Barbados who want to come to this level and to give Barbadians service with distinction, how will they then behave if we don't set the trend? Nobody must be pointing the finger at this chamber and saying, oh, those people in there are only big up, but they don't have any manners. Manners maketh man, and that is something that we should continue to work towards. But I'm not going to spend too much time, Mr. Speaker, sir, on the Honourable Member, except to say, the Honourable Member for St. Christchurch South, except to say that were I a resident of Christchurch South, he could never get my vote again. Because Barbadians need to know our leaders are leaders, and they do it with grace and distinction, and not to come into any institution, whether it be here or on the road, or on a political platform, or wherever, to criticize and to vilify and to insult people who have done them nothing. All the Honourable Prime Minister has done, Mr. Speaker, sir, is taken over the realms of this country and took us from 0, +1, +2, and we have risen. And everywhere you go in the world, and I travel in between with my own little pocket money, and everybody says, you are a member of that distinguished country with that most powerful woman. She's one of the most powerful women leaders in the world, and recognized because of her interest in climate change and resilience and all that. And if a small dot like Barbados is being recognized in that way, why should a Barbadian be treating us like this when we know that Barbadian is married though? That Barbadian would have had a mother though? That Barbadian would have had the free education? That Barbadian is working? And then all of a sudden, when that honourable member was finished speaking, got up and taken out all of his troops with him, that even made it worse, and I expected better of that honourable leader, the leader of the opposition. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, sir? The more you live and the more you observe, and my mother always used to say, may she rest in her grave, the more the monkey climb, the more you show his tail. And that is a Bajan saying. And I would not wish to make any more time on it, because I understand what are the constraints of time, except to say I thank all those leaders, whether they were Barbados Labour Party leaders or they were Democratic Labour Party leaders. One thing I can say about all of them, they showed the public respect. They showed that they can collaborate and work with the opposition or the government, whichever position they were in, and they never walked away leaving an element of disgrace on their name, and the way that honourable member did. But I will see him face to face. I want to say too, how thankful I am to be able to continue to give service to my country, not only as a member of parliament, but a community worker. We are doing a gathering today, Mr. Speaker, and I can't go. You know why? I want to be here to represent my parish and my country as we deliberate a budget of 2025, where there are so many excellent things that have happened that people would have at one time considered impossible. And I want to refer, sir, to the area where I serve in the elderly department. And it is okay when people say, well, she's old enough though, she should be taken along home. They do not understand the role that we as members of parliament play in helping to shape and implement the policies and programs that at the end of it all, it reaches into the rest of the community and even beyond. And therefore, I want to speak to the projects not necessarily mentioned in the budget fully, but we know that are continuing when it comes to the seniors of this country who have given their blood, sweat, and tears to build this Barbados. And many of them are suffering in a way, Mr. Speaker, that if the Honourable Prime Minister and this Barbados Labour Party government did not determine, yes, this is an aging society, many of them are at home, they're suffering, many of them need care in an institution, many of them are being duped of their funds, many of them are being beaten and robbed and everything else. That hospital, that district hospital over at Waterford is an example of what this government can do. A 400-room geriatric hospital to facilitate those seniors. Sometimes they can do no better, and that they need to be there for the 24-hour care. But there's so many others, Mr. Speaker, in our communities that are being pushed in a corner. They're being robbed of every cent they have. They're being beaten. Up to recently, we heard of one being raped, an 84-year-old. It took away my heart, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend the government for the vision of looking after the senior citizens. I want the government to look after that vision that is unfolding for the care of the disabled. And the legislation that was brought forth from the People Empowerment Ministry adds flavor to what we consider to be a good government that embraces everybody, the aged, the disabled, the poor, the working class, whoever they are. And that is what I call good governance of a society. I am happy to know that the funding will be extended, and of course that funding will be increased as well for those among us who are disabled. We have families who have children who cannot speak. They have no resources because of the poverty environments they're in. But that funding that will be offered to them will make a difference in their lives and the quality of lives of the children who are suffering. I understand, sir, that the By January 2026, there will be an introduction of an automatic increase for the national minimum wage by 2% annually. That too will help ordinary people to be able to enjoy life a little better. The one I was speaking earlier, sir, to do with the minors and the special needs who qualify for special needs grant, to be able to help those parents. Many families will be glad to go out to work, but they cannot because there's nobody to supervise those children with challenges, especially those who are disabled. They have to be there to feed them. The autistic children are suffering, and we need to continue to work with this government to bring up the various ideas and frame up the policy that will trickle down into the society and help to make the difference in their lives. There's nothing, sir, that touched me even more. There was the one with the challenged children and so on, but the one with the paternity and the maternity leave. And the Honourable Member St. Philip North was able to touch on it, and I believe, yes, nowadays we have women who have a little job, but because of the opportunity to give birth, and then the funding is not that much, so they still have to continue to go to work, that those families can get the maternity leave extension. Similarly, for the males, and the Honourable Member who is responsible for the Ministry of Labour, who's a part of that, the General Secretary there, spoke about it, where men must be an integral part of their children's development. And we are seeing, Mr. Speaker, and it's my own idea, my idea in the sense that I'm observing, too many of our boys are not being mentored by males, whether it be the granddaddy or the uncle or the father. And for me, this paternity leave helps to bond the fathers with children and give them an opportunity to develop a relationship and to help to guide them down a path that is correct and proper and make them the best citizens. We are losing too many of our males in this society, and I believe a lot of it is to do with the mentoring of males, and as I said, members of the family that are male, as well as fathers who are not around in the way, especially if the fathers and the mothers disagree. Sometimes they say, you can put the money there, but you're not seeing my child. Those boys need the mentoring, and almost every week we're hearing of them. The prison is not the place for our young people, or our old people either. And therefore, the paternity leave should, for me, in my understanding of it, help for our males to mentor the boys and the girls, and let them know you have two parents, you have grandparents, we are all one big family. And that leave, I believe, will help to make a tremendous difference in the lives of those persons. I want to commend the Honourable Member from Christchurch Central, a young man, come on here again, but not again, but it doesn't matter, for the delivery of this budget, Mr. Speaker. He has been able to make some tremendous strides. An ordinary working class boy he would have been, but he has been raised to the level where he can stand in this honourable chamber and expound and elaborate and explain that the rest of Barbados can understand. And that is a message that the young men will get. If the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central can do it, we can do it too at some point in time in our future lives. And I want to thank him sincerely. I am extremely proud of him, a humble, decent man, given the opportunity, and then the leader of the opposition comes in with his unpatriotic manner, and he treats this honourable chamber in the way that it is. I want, Mr. Speaker, to indicate I am extremely proud of this Barbados Labour Party. That is all I know and all I have been. And the policies that have come through many, many years of Barbados Labour Party leadership that has made a difference in the lives of all of us who are here, as well as the rest of Barbados, to look at the funding that will be offered and the opportunities for persons living in St. Peter and St. Lucie with the challenges with the water, and for them to be able to access a water tank and to be able to do things with many opportunities that the costs will not impact on them in the way that it does in most people. I believe, sir, that is another way of us in Barbados getting the opportunity to work out how we can reach out to people and help to appease them. I also want, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, to give some praises to my Prime Minister. And I'm doing it as that leader who is the first female leader in this country. And the same way we big up the men, we're going to big up the women too. Because collaboratively, we make one big family, and all of what we do will filter in the community and into the arteries of this country to let people know partnerships are important.
Honourable member has 1 more minute.
Sorry, sir?
The honourable member has 1 more minute.
1 more minute, yes, sir. But let me conclude, sir, by saying that I am extremely proud to be a part of this distinguished chamber under the guidance of the Honourable Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, and I am happy to know that the seniors out there, the young people, the disabled, the homeless, everybody has gotten an opportunity, as recognized in this budget, to be able to improve their quality of life. And I trust that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition will return here, having given us the disrespect that was meted out to us, return here, tear a leaf out of not necessarily the Honourable Prime Minister's book, but tear a leaf out of one of the pages of the former people in the Democratic Labour Party, whom we know, Mr. Speaker, made a tremendous contribution to this country. I'm not going to call names, I didn't get your permission, but indeed I know there are ordinary former Prime Ministers of Barbados who were a part of the Democratic Labour Party. There are former Prime Ministers and other members of Parliament and people in senior positions who are a part of the distinguished Labour Party. I would like to advise the Honourable Member for Christchurch South to change the attitude. A person who would have had free education that I did not have, and I believe others in here had, and we can let the young people understand this honorable chamber is a distinguished one, where we come in here, we learn, we entreat to others, we can make a difference, and for our young people to be able to want to emulate the goodness that is here, so that we can carry on a safe Barbados where government will look after the needs of the people, and we can work hand in hand to make it a safe and prosperous society. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the privilege.
Honourable member St. Michaelis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am faced with a major challenge because I'm actually guided by notes. That kind of mechanical approach to the conversation is always very challenging. But since I'm trying to avoid getting involved in any antagonistic kind of conversation, and I would like to play the role as an elder, I certainly have not reached the stage where I am compared with Nebuchadnezzar yet. And,
Your mic is on, Honourable member.
Hello?
Your mic is on?
Yes. And, but sir, you know, we live in a society who people make reference to the Bible and to the greatness of men of wisdom in the Bible. And some of these men, you can't even imagine that human beings can live on the face of the earth and still remain as fresh as I am. Sir, I would like to be able to say something constructive. And it is my voice, but unlike other persons who said that is the voice is not necessarily the voice of the person who is supposed to be perceived as the upfront orator. My voice is the voice of the people of St. Michael's East. And that's why I'm here. I am guided by the model of what was produced by Richard Wright and as well as James Baldwin when they wrote the text, Native Son. And there was a text which they produced called Notes of the Native Son. And I would like to add to that, Native Daughters. And when I say that, I am focusing exclusively on the purpose and the reason why I am here. You would expect me to speak on any aspect of ministerial responsibility, So I take my role here as the voice of my people from which I sprung. Sir, my mother, I have to say it, and I always look at my phone just to be refreshed in my memory about this black woman who could not scale 110 pounds. No doubt that she was an African woman, whether the nose, the lips, the hair, or the pigmentation. Anybody that see her will know who she is. And she was a hard-working woman who always wore a straw hat. And you know that is symbolic of the traditions of that time. But she took the responsibility for me, 2 sisters and a brother, who were the offspring of that household of my father and my mother. It doesn't matter whether it was married or not, but they were married. And I have another brother who lives in Toronto, so I understand the ramifications of whence one has to leave the land and go on a migration program in order to try to see if he can feed his family. That's my brother in Toronto. I have a brother who my father had a little, what do you call it? Philandering spirit. And therefore, I have another brother from a different mother who also lives in Sandy Grande. But the unity that remains among us is an example of what this black family in struggle is. Early in the discussions, I did make mention in an informal conversation to most of our people having to leave these lands for Great Britain and for Panama, for Costa Rica and Cuba. That is who we are. And some of the concepts that emerge in the illogical minds of our own people are that some of us are illegitimate children. They can't understand the family concept that emerged out of the evolution of our history at all. When you migrate 60,000 people to the Panama Canal, and then you set off a whole set to England to work on the London transport. So somehow, with persons who hold an Afrocentric perception of the world, they don't even see us as a real family. They have a new definition of what is supposed to be a family law, a family relationship, which is very, very difficult for any sociological study to clearly explain. But sir, my views came from my community. And I am a product, Sandwich in the middle of the pine plantation lands. The lands of Haggett Hall. And I've been given the privilege, the lands of Waterford and the Bell and Welchers. I am sandwiched between all of those communities, and I'm a product of all the dynamics that occur in those communities. I am shaped by what they instill in me at Belmont School and St. Giles School. And St. Giles School is grounded in a history of 1836, 2 years after emancipation. And that is why, just as others today talk about secondary school, they had none for them. So in 1836, St. Giles Primary School was perceived as a school on the hill because it was on my Lord's hill. And St. Giles Primary School shaped many persons who became, although they don't give credit to the primary schools, the went on. I know how these people's brains work. They went on to become ambassadors, Supreme Court judges, I don't call it all the names, and they went on to become premiers of Barbados. Premiers of Barbados. But there was always the people on the ground who never had the opportunity to participate in the governance of themselves because of what we inherited as what governance must be. I'm asking in this whole decentralization process, don't just talk it and then abandon it. I am talking about creating models, small units around the central government as we decentralize it, so that when we begin to discuss a budget, the budget comes from the ground and reflect what are the desires of the people. So when a group of elite people don't sit down and say, this is your budget, I am respectful of what has been done in terms of giving an opportunity to a little bush hall boy to come here and deliver a budget. And within the context of the traditional central budget, he has done well. But I would love to see a system, especially since little of the discussion went on around the transition from an outdated traditional system of Westminster, which was imposed upon us. I am of the opinion that we are at a point now where we need to decentralize the system and create a more integrated environment so that we can get the feelings from on the ground. I got my feelings from on the ground because after the budget was delivered. But I would really love to see a system, not as archaic as the system on this local government. Because I also know how man operates, finds himself into local government, and he becomes very enthusiastic about becoming part of central government, and then you have mischief makers in the central government, in the local government, that aspire to become part of central government. It's just like my feelings about a Senate. I will never be pleased with any government who can handpick somebody from around the garrison and put them in a Senate and then tell that person, come and see me tomorrow, you're going to be a minister. Not going to support it, not even if God tells me to support it. It's a system of politics, system of governance, a bilateral system that need to be suppressed and totally eradicated from this landscape. I know what I'm talking about because I am a victim of that. I am a victim of that. And rather than we having a system that gives an opportunity for the man or woman on the ground with all the creative talents, recreating a lot of top-down spin-offs from the days of the House of Lords. It is not even an institution that is equivalent to the House of Lords. Because at least people who believe in that aristocratic approach to governance felt that they were embracing people of some superior intellect. And sir, you know I'm constrained and trying to work what I have to do because
Of time.
within the time you give to me, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I also would like to propose, because I don't even know what time how long it will allow me to
You
speak.
start, I remember you started at 3:05.
Yes. and I got to make calculations. Anyhow, sir, look, the call for decentralization requires that we look and see what was done in Grenada and if it was working, not because of the abandonment of the revolution of Grenada, because the abandonment came as a result of treacherous individuals who don't want to see any decentralization of the system itself. But they had community councils. Look and see what they did in Cuba. And you see district councils. And see what comes from the ground. Look at the old model in Tanganyika or Tanzania, as it was called after the independence. Look at the model which was introduced by Julius Nyerere, as how these things were structured to give the majority class, and in most cases, the black working class people of those different sovereignties, the opportunity to participate in decision making in the system itself. Tell us what are the challenges that you face? Because we have to extrapolate from the behavior of the United States of America that in the Caribbean and in Barbados, we respect each other in the Cuban relationship and all the rest of the relationships across the Caribbean. But there are people who will like you to break relationships with your own brothers and sisters in the region because they know that those relationships provide us with alternative relationships or alternative forms of government. But I believe that we should spend some time, even when we spoke about local government or councils, community councils. I don't believe that we should abandon that idea. Too much discussion is going on the ground level without those voices being heard. They can't be heard in here with 30 members of parliament, whether it's government or opposition. So we have to put units in place to give those people an opportunity, especially in an educated society, an opportunity to be able to ask for what they want and not accept what they're given. So it's about philosophical principles. It is not about Hobbes. Hobbes is a racist, a man who believed in the principles of the philosopher kings of the time. So I quite agree. I quite agree with my brother from St. Michael's South. All of those who are conscious of our black history will see the condemnation of such people like Hobbes and even Locke. All were racists of the time. All of them was supportive of white supremacy. And I feel everybody in here is dumpsy. And you have not reached the level of civilization where you can formulate any unit called a government. I can't support that. But what I hear from the ground, sir, from the sons and daughters of my community, is that they're still living in poverty. So after emancipation, when they discusses our freedom, they're still living in poverty. I am not against, I'm saying it again, I am not joining hands with anybody who can be so seriously backward that they can't understand the importance of the call in modern times for reparations for our people. I don't need to be struggling with no bureaucracy who serves as obstacles in the smooth flow of the campaign and the advocacy for reparation and economic enfranchisement.
Your Honourable Member has one more minute.
Oh, sir. Could you let me just stretch this point?
Stretch the point.
No.
Stretch the point.
In my community, this party has built a geriatric hospital on a zone 1. I don't even know if it's zone 1 or zone A. They have built it on that pocket during the time that I served here as parliamentary representative of St. Michael's East. And whether you change it from zone 1 to zone A, which I have not been able to see any clear delineation of the area which constitutes zone A or zone 1. I believe that is a form of disrespect too. But you can build that hospital there, which is going to require sewage. And my people who work at the Bell and now live on the lands, the so-called RAB lands at the time, squatting on the Bell, and they don't have a water toilet. I appreciate what was said by the Prime Minister that she went traveling and she now has the funds, but I don't want to hear it next year again for the budget. I don't want to hear it next year for the budget again. I have plans for you to resolve the challenges of pit toilets in St. Michael's East. I don't want to hear it, sir. I don't want to hear it, sir, that my people must live in an area where they are still stumping their toes and wringing their ankles because of the unpaved roads in an urban community. In an urban community. And when you walk the train line from almost, sir, adjacent to your constituency, there's a train line that comes from down the bottom of the Liquid Village area through the Belgady area up. But you know, all opportunities were provided for people to walk in the Hackett Hall area or the Barber Green Road for recreational purposes. I'm saying that if these discussions existed before this budget, those things would have to be on the agenda. Those are the things that my constituents are asking me about.
Honourable Member understood.
Yeah.
You got to come.
So, sir, I wish, and hopefully, I don't think I can say everything now. I understand that. But I hope, sir, that in the passionate way in which I've actually said it, don't even think that it's theatrical or who all of a sudden know these words. All right? Don't even think it's theatrical. It's how I feel. Because I have friends and family living on the Bell. And if I go at them, and nature calls me, like how nature calls other persons in here recent times, I can go in them toilets. You can't get a whole friend if you live in a house and you gotta go into them toilets morning, noon, or night. So, sir, I hope that this synopsis at least capture the spirit of the feelings of the young men in Liquid Village, the young men in the Ivy, Hackett Hall, and all the surrounding areas, all the areas in the St. Michael's East constituency. Sorry that I could not speak on issues at a wide national level, but I hope that I have been able to make a contribution in which these people of St. Michael's East have sent me to make. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise to join in the debate this afternoon in support of the budgetary proposals which the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central so eloquently delivered in this August chamber. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I have to congratulate the Honourable Member because he comes from, he originates from St. Michael, West Central. In fact, for those who don't know, he comes from 4th Avenue, Long Gap, and therefore the people of my constituency, and he's no stranger to the constituency and certainly the branch when he's presenting, asked me to convey our thanks to him. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the constituents of St. Michael West Central, not only for returning me to Parliament, but for allowing me to contribute to this Barbados Labour Party government, and of course contributing to the overall development of Barbados. In fact, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central did say that tourism obviously the backbone of the Barbados economy, and it is with a sense of humility that I accept such a lofty commendation on behalf of the constituents of St. Michael West Central, and certainly all of those who are working within the tourism sector in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, I know that there is a significant reliance on tourism, and as such, I'm also acutely aware of the weight that I carry on my shoulder as Minister of Tourism and International Transport for Barbados, recognizing that our society depends in no small measure on, of course, the continued development of Barbados, and in particular, brand Barbados, as it has been reaping substantial benefits within the economy. I also, Mr. Speaker, want to say that on behalf of all the players within the tourism sector, not only the ministry, the BTMI, of course, the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, the Intimate Hotels of Barbados, and others, including all those associated agencies, for helping us to accomplish what we're accomplishing within the tourism sector. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I don't settle for numerical growth. I also believe that we have to pursue strategies not only for quantitative growth, but we also have to ensure that the quality of experience in Barbados is maintained and certainly exceeded, because I am convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that the expansion of the elements that cause us to understand and to build tourism in Barbados is one that caters for a better life for all Barbadians. And of course, Mr. Speaker, I do not lose sight of the fact that what would commonly be referred to as trickling down, I am working hard to ensure that the benefits from the tourism sector, that those benefits are pouring through to the economic and the social, and contribute to economic and social gains for Barbados. And of course, such pouring through can largely be contributed to the fact and be achieved through the deliberate and targeted program of massive expansion of the linkages within the sector, because we have to hold true to our slogan that tourism is our business. And as I contemplate, Mr. Speaker, and all this that I've been doing in tourism, I look back and I'm very fortunate, and I thank God that I've been able to work within the tourism sector for the past 25 years. And that bringing that experience, not only managing, but also bringing the experience of strategy to the Ministry of Tourism has helped and has caused me to make deliberate but very good decisions in respect of how we are progressing within the tourism sector. For us, Mr. Speaker, tourism remains the only economic activity from which we can get the fastest possible response. In fact, it's almost like a stimulus. And we saw it coming out of the post-COVID period when we were able to put tourism back on track, get the airlift, and of course, what we are faced with today is nothing short of a spectacular performance coming from the industry. You know, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition said that we, in this debate, that we are a failed government. But Mr. Speaker, tourism is impressive and tourism is solid. Mr. Speaker, let me explain why I'm telling you that tourism is impressive and it is solid. Since 2018, the tourism GDP has increased by 6%. 6%. Long-stay visitors increased since 2018 by 3.7%. And Barbados, Mr. Speaker, has experienced the largest expansion of airlift into Barbados resulting in record air seat capacity in Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, in the United Kingdom, for example, Virgin commenced their double daily flights last October the 26th. October 26th last year. The year before that, it was November. And they operate 2 flights out of Heathrow into Barbados for the winter season. Mr. Speaker, there is no other destination in the Caribbean like Barbados that has 2 double daily flights coming from the same London Heathrow Airport, from the same airline during the winter season. None, Mr. Speaker. British Airways has 14 flights during the peak winter period, and they also add additional airlift during the Easter period. And Mr. Speaker, the record, the data, it shows that I have presided over the largest expansion of airlift out of the United States, out of United Kingdom, and certainly out of Latin America with COPA. But Mr. Speaker, let's look at Delta, for example. Delta commenced daily services from Atlanta November of 23rd last year. Delta in the winter, both out of Atlanta and New York, increase and are bringing, I should tell you, that they're bringing approximately 33,800 seats. American Airlines out of New York, 30,272 seats. Out of Philadelphia, on the weekly service, 4,300 seats. And Boston with JetBlue contributing 4,669 seats. Mr. Speaker, the increased air seat capacity alone this winter is over 68,372 seats. That is additional capacity this winter in Barbados, Mr. Speaker. I might also tell you that the diaspora groups are coming because through Atlanta with Delta, they have a number of groups that are coming here, not only for regathering, but also to contribute in the philanthropic approaches and also initiatives that they're doing. But Mr. Speaker, there's more good news from the United States market. Beyond winter, Delta has already communicated that it will extend the daily service from Atlanta through the summer. And at the end of Cropover, they will have a 3 times weekly service, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, until November 6th, and thereafter they go back to the daily schedule. American Airlines from JFK, so far, thanks be to God, no change. And the American Philadelphia service will continue weekly throughout August. Initially, they were going to cease at the end of winter. They are now continuing through August, and after that, they will break for fall and come back for the winter season. Mr. Speaker, I illustrated the contrast between this government, Barbados Labour Party, the ministers on this Barbados Labour Party's government side, and those within the Democratic Labour Party. And for quick reference, Delta operated into Barbados between 2006 and March of 2011. They had a scheduled service that fluctuated between 4 flights a week to weekly from Atlanta. What the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, didn't tell you is that in 2015, that Delta had an MRG in the winter season, Mr. Speaker, unheard of. So that when they're coming here, I want to give the impression that we are putting together MRGs, and may I add, Mr. Speaker, we have not given any MRGs to any American carrier coming into Barbados for the winter at all, Mr. Speaker. So when they're coming here to tell you otherwise, we have to present them with the facts. The Delta service was eventually terminated in 2011 under the Democratic Labour Party. We started it and they ended it. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, I have a Delta passenger chart going back from 2006 to 2011. It started off when we were in government, 2006, 9,883 passengers. We took it to high at the time of 13,903. And when the Dems came to office, Mr. Speaker, look at 9,680 in 2008, 6,220 in 2009, 3,229 in 2010, and 1,224 in 2011. Mr. Speaker, I will make this a document in the House because the House must be aware of this. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is that what have we done?
entered Gadinejo as a Minister of Tourism. I went to work with the officials, with the Director of Marketing in the United States and the PS and others. We went and we saw Delta, because the only way you're going to grow airlift is if you have a strategy one, and if you decide to get more airlift into Barbados to drive the numbers forward, not only arrivals but spend. We went there, Mr. Speaker, and what is the end result? For the winter season alone, 30,000 seats, Mr. Speaker, that Barbados now enjoying, as they speak to, enjoying those seats coming into Barbados with no MRG, might I add. Mr. Speaker, and throughout the year, it is projected that we will have 50,000 seats from Delta alone. Mr. Speaker, air connectivity is critical, and therefore that is why we pursue a strategy of airlift. And as a result of that strategy, we have driven airlift capacity from the United States to a point where it surged, where we had a capacity of 11% higher, and obviously during the peak periods, obviously, Mr. Speaker, contributing to record-breaking areas. Mr. Speaker, let me briefly touch on those. Long-stay visitor arrivals rose by 10.7%. The U.S. market contributed 76% of the growth. Hotel occupancies, well, Mr. Speaker, that's a new record. You are not hearing the hoteliers and the workers complaining about work, lack of work, and you're not certainly hearing the hoteliers complain that they can't keep the hotels full. Mr. Speaker, to get a reservation into Barbados, even if you are bringing a major conference, is now very difficult, sir. And look at the arrivals, Mr. Speaker. I came in 2022, 539,746 arrivals to the destination. Last year, Mr. Speaker, 704,340, representing a growth of 10%, Mr. Speaker. And we want to talk about the earnings, Mr. Speaker. We know that tourism contributes 50% of the export sector. But look at the earnings, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic Labour Party gave them when we came into office, it was $2.2 billion. Mr. Speaker, 2022, just coming off of the pandemic, 1.869 billion. 2023, 2.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, 2024, 2.73, $2.6 billion, Mr. Speaker. And we've done this by expanding and driving more airlift to Barbados. And you know what that means? You would have heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central speaking about the number of new hotels coming on stream. 6 new properties, Mr. Speaker. And when I calculated the investment, those 6 are worth $1.7 billion in investment, never achieved, and never seen by the Democratic Labour Party. Mr. Speaker, 1,572 rooms and residences to be added to the hotel room inventory in Barbados, helping us to build out the case for airlift, more airlift to Barbados. Mr. Speaker, when you add Marriott's $300 million investment in the renovation of properties, we will have $2 billion being invested in renovated and new properties. Mr. Speaker, you drive more airlift to Barbados. You drive more airlift to Barbados when you have more hotel rooms, when you have more development, when you have more attractions. People get more work, more jobs, more money, and more economic activity. Mr. Speaker, and I heard the Leader of the Opposition talking about spend. Mr. I can just give you one quick insight. Mr. Speaker, I can beg you for another 10 minutes. Mr. Speaker, the Visa cardholder report for 2024. Now, you got Visa credit cards, you got MasterCard, you have Amex, and you have a range of them. But I can give you one example in the interest of time.
I remember you can get the 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir. In 2024, last year, for example, the spend, and this is spent by Visa credit cards with persons with foreign credit cards spending in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, $240 million spent in Barbados. An increase of 18% over the prior year, Mr. Speaker. And when you think about it, your report breaks down the categories. It can tell you, for example, restaurant and dining, US $53 million. That's 106 million Barbados dollars, Mr. Speaker. Restaurants and dining in Barbados. When you look at hotel and lodging, retail, even jewelry, Mr. Speaker. I didn't even know that we earn so much money from jewelry. 20 million Barbados dollars, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and time and against me, so I can't continue through the report. But I know, Mr. Speaker, that I have branch meetings to attend to and to speak at, and I will even expand even further. But look at the cruise season, Mr. Speaker. We have a situation where the cruise sector in Barbados, where we are growing it. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we anticipate we will have over 900,000 cruise ship passengers passing through Barbados. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the port is now too small to accommodate the ships that are lining to come to Barbados. It is a good problem to have, but it's also a problem that led by the Prime Minister that we are going to solve. And when we solve it, we will have more cruise ships coming here. The port taxi operators have not been left out, because one of the things that they will say, ensure that we secure a marketing officer for them to help them also build out this sector. And Mr. Speaker, shortly I can be talking about summer cruise in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, look at the Grand Liams International Airport. Grand Liams International Airport, so for now can't cope with the airlift that coming into Barbados. You have approximately 2.3 million passengers, inbound, outbound transfers and transit passengers coming through Grand Liams that passed through Grand Liams International Airport last year. And Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition asked about the length of stay in the United States, trying to give the impression that the length of stay is not going, that you're getting more airlift, but they're not staying longer. Mr. Speaker, let me debunk that myth very early. There's growth in all categories of stay except the one-day stay. Let me break it down quickly. Length of stay one day moved in 2003 from 11,447 to 8,687, a decline of 2760. And that's a good problem to have, because I explain why later. 2 to 3 days grew by 2,256. 4 to 6 days, 934. 11 to 14 days, 9,334. Mr. Speaker, and if the Leader of the Opposition is in any doubt whatsoever, between 15 to 21 days, it moved from 2023, 58,416 to 91,993, represented a growth absolute change of 33,577. And then when you think about the 22 plus days for length of stay, it moved from 58,703 in 2023 to 71,459 in 2024, Mr. Speaker. And they want to talk about over-reliance on tourism, but Mr. Speaker, the strength in tourism has always been the ability to rebound. And tourism, Mr. Speaker, is the fastest sector to rebound coming out of any shock or any crisis, and that is a matter of record, Mr. Speaker. And he talked about the former BTMI Chief Executive Officer. I dealt with that already. I don't know why the Leader of the Opposition will come here and raise it again. But what I can tell him, I came and I found Yanks. No, shouldn't call his name, Mr. Speaker. I called and I saw the former CEO. I replaced him with a Barbadian. And now, Mr. Speaker, that chapter has been closed and he has flown like a bird. Madam, Mr. Speaker, the Leading Opposition made the point that we share flights with Antigua and St. Lucia. Not at all, Mr. Speaker. We entered an arrangement with a tagging of flights, one of them with Virgin coming out to the UK, and that was as a direct request from the governments of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada. What is wrong with helping our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean? They are not taking market share from us, and at no time I can tell this chamber that we don't have anything greater, anything less, on those flights of 65%. They come here to Barbados, Mr. Speaker, but we did so to help them. So that when you talk about tourism and numbers, but Mr. Speaker, you know, the Leader of the Opposition really should not be listening to his advisors. And if he wants to answer a question, he should really come in here or call me and ask me, because I have a duty, because he's a Leader of the Opposition. And if he asks questions, I have a duty to respond to him. That's how we do things in the Barbados Party, respectfully, Mr. Speaker. But I want to tell him, if he wants to ask any questions, don't stop listening to those who are advising him and ask him, Mr. Speaker. Because like I did last year in the budget, when I showed all the airlift that they lost in Barbados. I don't have time to repeat it, so I won't go there. But Mr. Speaker, to the budgetary measures very quickly. When you look at what we've done with the reduction in the air travel development fee, we've reduced it from 35 to 20 again until 2026 in order to spur and to drive more traffic from the Caribbean market. We removed the duties on commercial equipment, Mr. Speaker, and when you talk about rum shops, when you talk about community tourism, Mr. Speaker, but the budgetary measures stated very clearly the removal of all duties and VAT for commercial equipment for restaurants and cook shops, Mr. Speaker. So if a rum shop is a cook shop, they can apply, Mr. Speaker. And when you talk about concessions, and we get concessions here, there, and everywhere, Mr. Speaker, we don't talk the talk, we walk the talk. They have opportunities now to get kitchen equipment. So the people in Baxter's Road, and the constituency in Oystons, and throughout my constituency, all of them who have cook shops can apply for this concession. Mr. Speaker, and the leader of opposition should be acutely aware that is also a special development legislation that would also speak, if you were aware and had researched it, to the whole issue of development. Mr. Speaker, look at the restaurants. The Prime Minister has allowed, and the Minister in the Ministry has allowed for those restaurants who were not benefit on the TDA because they were not on a hotel compound to come for. Mr. Speaker, you know what that will do for restaurants on the South Coast like Champers and Tapas? Oh, Mr. Speaker, but I can't begin to imagine what that will do, unlock even more economic activity for Barbados, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, forgive me if it sounds as though I am batting solidly, but I'm also tell you, as a former member for the city DM in the middle said, if you don't sing your song, nobody can sing it for you. Mr. Speaker, but a bit of caution. We have a geopolitical world that is moving in a direction, Mr. Speaker. And we also have, as the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central made the point, that we have Marriott hotels closed. They're making this $300 million investment. They have kept the workers on a short time. You will have workers involved in the construction site. But the reality is this: Colony Club and Tamarind, with a combined 202 rooms, will mean that 73,730 available room nights would be lost during the closure of construction, Mr. Speaker. But the hotels are still full in Barbados. Planes are still coming. The impact of these hotels, yes, will be significant on the airlift too. But what I can also say to you, that when you add Crystal and 39, 249 rooms, you can have about 90,000 room nights being unavailable. But the good thing about it, because we're resilient, you have not only other hotels that are generating and increasing more occupancy, but you also have the summer accommodation, not the accommodation, the other rentals, the Airbnb, Airbnb and others, who will now pick up and benefit from this. But I thought it necessary to make that point. Mr. Speaker, we have appointed within the BTMI European Director. It was a little bit late, but we got the European Director. There's a new European strategy, which I'm going to further flesh out. The strategic goal is to drive airlift from that side of the continent. We are going in there. We're going to relocate the BATMI's office from Brussels. We're going into Frankfurt, Mr. Speaker, to drive more business. We're going in heavily into France, into Germany, into Italy, and we're getting into the Scandinavian countries, Mr. Speaker. And with the Cabinet's approval, I am going to those markets to drum up additional business for Barbados and also to secure airlift coming out to those destinations. And I will speak to that later. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the tariffs as it relates to Canada and the United States is one that will have us also observe some caution, Mr. Speaker. Because you can't have a situation whereby with all these tariffs and so on coming in, and the strength, and we sell hotel rooms in US dollars here, Canadians will purchase it in Canadian dollars. So that is something that we have to keep top of mind. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, there are opportunities for Barbados that we've started exploiting, even from last year, last November, when I was there. And what we're doing now is we looked at travel patterns, and as a result of what is happening in Canada, we believe we have the ideal opportunity to move even more business that would have otherwise gone into Orlando and Florida, that we want to move that business to Barbados, and we are working diligently, and I will keep the country updated on that. With respect to the United States, I'm still going after lift out of the west coast of America. We're still thinking about Dallas, Houston, Chicago, and of course, Orlando. And I will keep the country informed. But Mr. Speaker, I've only had 2 years and 4 months on this job. And you know, I always say I serve with the pledge of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister can tell goodbye tomorrow. You never know. But for what I have accomplished, Mr. Speaker, along with the team, because it's not a one-man band, it is a team, Mr. Speaker. We have to say to Barbadians that we are very, very happy and proud. But there's still a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And I go to work every day thinking, how best can we improve the arrivals into Barbados? How best can we make this destination even more spectacular? But Mr. Speaker, before I close, we've had some successes and I want to make the point. Sugar Bay in Barbados was named the #1 rated hotel globally in January of this year, Mr. Speaker, achieving an extraordinary net promoter score, securing its place as Virgin's #1 holidays for the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, what an outstanding achievement, and I congratulate the management and the staff at Sugar Bay for all that they have done. Mr. Speaker, talking about quality as well, Oceans 2 Beach Club and Spa has just gained acceptance into the Global Luxury Travel Group Virtuoso. Congratulations to the managing director and all of her team members who continue to remain focused. But like I said, there are some geopolitical issues that we're going to have to monitor. I have decided that it is absolutely necessary that we put in place a monitoring unit and a response team so that we can respond to these challenges as we see fit. And I know, Mr. Speaker, that despite all the critics had to say, despite all that they said about us, we are paving the way for a wonderful opportunity for Barbados to remain focused on tourism.
I remember has 1 more minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In terms of the pillars of tourism and the growth plan, Mr. Speaker, but when I came to the ministry, they said, well, we have to get a growth plan. And here are the pillars: airlift, new tourism product, modernization of the hotel plan, training, management, development, and of course, succession planning is what we want to do. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all the both permanent secretaries in the ministry and the ministry staff, the BTM management team and staff for everything that they do. We have done a lot of work. Like I say, we have a lot to do, but we will remain, Mr. Speaker, on guard to closely monitor the international situation, to swiftly and effectively respond to situations that are likely to impact Barbados' tourism industry. And to this end, like I said, I will set up a tourism situation special response unit, because we have to be nimble, Mr. Speaker, to deal with situations through consultation, and we are going to have a variety of stakeholders involved within the sector. So that, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to this honourable chamber and to give this chamber the assurance that as long as I continue to serve as a Minister of Tourism, I am going to continue, and the team know that I work them hard, to work hard on behalf of Barbados. And our story, Mr. Speaker, will be one of continued growth and success. We will have a few hiccups along the way. We will have a few challenges, like I indicated, in respect to hotel closures. And it may have an impact maybe on some of the numbers that we may see later on. But Mr. Speaker, rest assured that we are going to go from strength to strength. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member St. Philip West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the honourable member from St. Michael West Central has been laser-like in the way he has shown Barbados how one of the major engines of growth for us in the last several years has truly performed under the successive leadership of a number of different ministers of tourism, and certainly under his tenure. And sir, going forward, this budget, which was so ably delivered by the honourable member from Christchurch East Central, who I have great admiration for, this budget going forward speaks to us now that as we have started to grow, let us continue to grow, but do it inclusively. Inclusive growth is the priority that this particular budget provides. And what that means in simple terms is as we grow, we carry along everyone. Barbados is moving forward, and we want every single citizen to share in that journey. We have certainly navigated some challenges in the past. We have stabilized the economy for the most part, and we now are willing to build a strong foundation for inclusive growth. And sir, I know that the time is short, and so I will jump very quickly. You know, when we talk about inclusive growth, it only happens if people start to feel as if they can be a part of what is going on in the future. And I want to say to you, sir, as we talk about including people within the first 24 hours of the budget having been delivered, the budgetary proposals haven't been delivered. There were calls in St. Philip West, that constituency I have the honor to represent, where persons were calling very quickly to say, how do I get access to that $300, which is part of the solidarity allowance. Sir, I had a conversation with the minister responsible for finance today to find out exactly how they will get access to it. And he has said that really and truly, let everybody know, those people who were calling and not sure, pensioners who weren't sure if they would be eligible, to remind them of what was said in the budget, that indeed anybody over the age of 18 years old who are legally resident here and who have paid into the national insurance over the last 12 months, that they are all eligible. That means, sir, that the postman is eligible. It means that the policeman is eligible. It means that you, sir, Mr. Speaker, you are maybe eligible, you are eligible as well. It means that pensioners are eligible. It means that the eligibility extends in a wide way, and this speaks directly to the Prime Minister's position, which has always been from the beginning, that if we share in the burden, we will share in the bounty. And there are those on the other side, sir, who would want to nay and trivialize the $300, but sir, that $300 is the minimum payment. On one lady who called, it's the minimum payment for her to get her electricity turned back on. It is also that $300 is for that lady who also called yesterday, who indicated that she was behind in some payments on a loan, and that is enough for them to actually put her back in decent standing so that she can show goodwill. So for some, $300 might not seem like a lot, but for the residents and the constituents of St. Philip West, and I know the constituents of all of our members, that $300 is going to be significant. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk about carrying along everyone, you would have heard in the budgetary proposals that the credit unions, we are lifting the ceiling on the amount of money under the management of the credit unions that they can now invest in real estate, invest in energy projects, invest in the very same tourism development. But sir, that might sound very lofty, that this is something being given to credit unions, but if you, like my mother, she had a credit union account before she ever had a bank account. And what happens now is that when you are a shareholder of the cooperative credit union, what happens now is that they take some of the monies that you have put in there and they put it towards these additional investments, which means you are going to earn some dividends on the shares that you have in those co-ops. What this has the potential to do is not only improve the capacity of credit unions to participate in the inclusive growth as investors, but it also has the potential to allow ordinary Barbadians to become another class of shareholders that are able to share in the wealth. Sir, I also have to say to you that something that has been exciting for the constituents of St. Philip West has been the arrangement that is now being made with regards to fathers being also able to get paternity leave to help take care of their children. I will say to you that this, in fact, is not just about the measure that is in the budgetary proposals, but it is also a part of showing Barbados where our values are. We believe in active co-parenting, where man and woman together or parents together are able to raise those children. This is part of implanting that value in the way that we do things in terms of paternity leave. it is also important for us to understand that for too long, and I will say this and I will probably get some licks for it, some of the men have been disrespected in this country with regards to the role that they are allowed to play, many who want to play that role in the lives of our children. And I think that this is an opportunity to say we have to elevate our mindset to understand that men, those who want to participate, those who want to step up and want to lean into parenting and fatherhood, that we need to create space for them too, to be able to participate in the rearing of the child. So I therefore commend this government, of which I have the privilege to be a part, for having the kind of foresight to do this. Another area that we have had, we in St. Philip West, where we have received some calls in again to the constituency office, and I see Sarah, my constituency assistant, is here and can verify such, that indeed there are a number of cook shops that were calling to find out whether or not they would be eligible. Again, I spoke to the Minister of Finance earlier today, and he was explaining, look, let them know, and I believe the constituents from across this country, all the residents can understand, those who have cook shops, as long as you are registered with the Commerce Department, with Commerce, that is going to be one of the areas. So those of you who are not yet registered, go and get yourself registered. And once you are able to have your status verified, the privilege that is being offered in this regard would be extended to you. Sir, I had the opportunity on the day after the budget to go to a breakfast meeting with the members of the Chamber of Commerce and to sit on a panel with them as we discussed the budgetary proposals. And sir, I am happy to say that the Chamber of Commerce in general, they said that they were pleased as business people who are part of the economic engine of this country, that they were generally pleased with the provisions of this budgetary, of this budget. There were, however, some concerns raised, and I think they're legitimate ones, sir. One was that to make sure that with all of the good that this budget seeks to do, that we are also able to implement those measures in a manner that is timely, that we can deal with the implementation deficit that we all know has existed, not just in this government, but before. And again, conversations with the minister in the Ministry of Finance have indicated that they're seeking to put a stronger framework together for implementation that looks at how they will be able to deal with projects, to look at how they'll be able to deal with accountability, and how they will definitely be able to deal with how they are effectively collaborating to do this. And so I would wish also to commit to the members of the business community here in Barbados, with whom I liaise in my new assignment with responsibility for economic affairs and investment, that we will continue the dialogue, we will continue the collaboration, and indeed they have asked also that we meet with them and provide some additional information on the new national insurance arrangements, and we have committed to do that. Again, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance has committed for us to continue to do that. One of the areas that was also raised at that time was that perhaps the 2% raise increase, as well as the fact that companies now will be required to match the contribution of their employees with regards to the catastrophe resilience and regenerative fund, that they said, well, you know what, that could add additional costs. And you know what? It might very well do so. However, part of what we have said is you have to share the burden as well as the bounty. And when it comes to the catastrophe resilience and regenerative fund, the bottom line is, if there's a catastrophe, all of us, businesses, households, we are all impacted. And the same way that the employees must now contribute a percentage, the same way government has agreed to give 1/4 of 1% of GDP to this fund, the same way too the business community, also we invite them to be a part of that collective that will ensure that this country has some type of security, or that we've built in some resilience through that catastrophe fund and others. Sir, I know that my time is coming to an end. However, sir, there were some issues or some concerns or some accusations, as the term was also used yesterday by the Honourable member from Christchurch South with regards to education. It is not a portfolio that I hold any longer, but I think I have a responsibility, as the current minister now resides in another place, that I am able to share with you. I do not know why some members of the opposition party don't leave Alma Paris alone and leave the children of Alma Paris alone. A question was raised, and the impression could have been taken that the children from Alma Paris were not being properly served because they may not have been tested, and therefore the intervention that is being made on their behalf or in their interest may not necessarily be one that is being properly attended to by the ministry. And let me, Mr. Speaker, through you, make it very clear. I spoke with the principal, the current acting principal of the school, as well as other members within the Ministry of Education, and they have reassured me, as I was assured before I left that portfolio, that every single child has been diagnostically tested, and that in fact, it is what we said we would do. It was one of the conditions that was important before we opened that school, sir. And in fact, it has indeed been done. The particular plans for those children have been developed, and they're now being assisted with an alternate curriculum that is being properly monitored to ensure that they are getting value and quality out of that experience. Sir, another question that was raised was that of whether or not the Ministry of Education had consulted sufficiently with the public. Sir, let me tell you. Certainly since I joined that ministry way back when, from mid-2022, the conversations with regards to education transformation moved ahead in earnest, with the unions responsible for teachers, the associations responsible for principals at all levels, with teachers, with students, with the Parent Teachers Association, with all many others. And it was based on those conversations, plus subsequent conversations throughout that time, that the proposals that came out in October of 2023 came from that. In fact, very shortly before the proposals were brought to the people of Barbados, and these were just the proposals that came out of those consultations with stakeholders ahead. There were proposals. The document was titled proposals. So it was for us to bring to the public, these are things that are being considered. Then subsequently, Mr. Speaker, you will recall that there were public consultations at several different locations across Barbados in terms of town hall meetings from October to November of that year, sir. That was followed up again by technical consultations with people who are technocrats, who are the experts in education. It was followed up, sir, by a number of focus groups that included a number of organizations, including non-governmental organizations, conversations with the faith-based community, and many others about what was being proposed, sir. There was also a consultation, several of them internally with the members of the education officers. Sir, I share this because as recently as a couple weeks ago, sir, you heard the Prime Minister speak about it, but what she did not tell you is that when the Democratic Labour Party was under another leader, the Ministry of Education invited them to a consultation, and they showed up and made a contribution so that we could come forward with better proposals. However, when a couple weeks ago, under the current leader, the Prime Minister herself invited the leader of the opposition and his team, they opted out. And so the intention, if we were to draw such an inference, is that they're interested more in picking apart what there is than in coming to the table in a timely manner to contribute to what will be. And that just tells you where the head of people are. Because rather than come in and be a part of building up, there are those who would prefer to tear down. But what we don't recognize, what we do not recognize, is if we do not come together and come up with an approach that makes sense for as many of us as we can, there are going to be people who are going to be happy and people who are not going to be happy in every system there is. But we have to solve for the greater good. And sir, the bottom line is that even if your children are already grown, it is your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your godchildren who have to live in the system. Who have to live in the system. And unless we decide that we are going to come and make the changes that are for good, we are going to do a disservice to them, sir. The bottom line is, sir, those who left Barbados, who left primary school back in the 1970s and 1960s and 1980s, it is a very different world in 2025. We cannot continue, sir, to do things in the way that we have always done them. And therefore, there needs to be a change, and it can't be a little change as is being recommended. Simply tweak the curriculum was one of the suggestions that was made. But sir, let us just use some common sense for a minute. Even if, not that that's what we're doing or what we propose to do, even if you only tweak the curriculum, sir, when you have a new curriculum, don't you then have to go and train people to be able to deliver the same curriculum? Do you not also, sir, need to adjust the teaching methods to a 21st century teaching methods? I'll give you an example, sir, with regards to that. We know for years, not just now, that we were having problems in Barbados with mathematics. You know what we have discovered, sir? That the problem with regards to mathematics was not necessarily that the children can't learn it. The problem was how we were teaching it. As a result, significant resources have now been put in place to help teachers be able to teach math better. Because a child will not learn if a teacher cannot teach it in the right way and in a suitable way. That is just one example, so you can't just tweak curriculum. You also have to adjust teaching methods. You have to look at how you assess children, sir. We recognize, sir, that just an exam is not the only way. There are children who choke on an exam. Some of us in here have admitted that we were never good at exams. But if someone were to bring us aside and have a conversation with us, they will realize that we really know the work. There are other techniques and ways of assessing that does not only include pencil and paper tests. And that, in fact, when you change curriculum, that is also a part of what you have to adjust, sir. You also have to adjust the school structures, sir. Because, in fact, as we are now seeking and learning from world experience, that project-based learning is a better way to teach children. In other words, you don't just give them a book and say, read it and memorize. You also give them projects in which they have to apply the knowledge that they learn, and you will see different students coming to the top of that experience in a significant way. So, sir, this thought that you can only tweak a curriculum, and that is all that it takes, it is a myth. And it is not broad thinking, and is not deep thinking, and it is representative of what we have seen in these areas, sir. I know that my time is short, but give me 5 more minutes, sir.
No, honestly.
Thank you very much, sir.
5 more minutes is a practical impossibility.
A practical impossibility?
At this point in time.
Okay, sir. Well, I will tell you something, sir. Another thing that was raised was that of the teaching commission. And it was said that we said we would bring a teaching commission and we didn't. You know what? On the face of it, sir, that is correct. However, I just want to let this country know that the teaching commission, all of the foundational work has been put in place for the teaching commission. And it is now just a matter of being able to appoint those commissioners and to make sure that the proper heads are organized at the financial level and through the Ministry of Finance. But we have done at the Ministry of Education all the foundational work for it. Another thing that was raised, Mr. Speaker, was that of the master teachers. Sir, that process of recruiting master teachers took a little bit longer than we had thought. Why? Because there are a couple of layers. When it comes to choosing master teachers, sir, you don't just go in and interview and sit down and talk. You have to go and assess those teachers as they are teaching. You have to, sir, make sure that through that observation, you're able to assess their competence, that you're able to look at the portfolios that they have put together, that they're able to go through certain workshops, sir. And it is after that is done that you have assessed the competence through the observation, through the workshops, through the portfolios, and the other methods that you use. Then you get into interviews, sir. And so the process is a little bit longer. And that is the reason why. So I'm telling you, however, sir, that process has already begun. I will also say to you, sir, that the work that has to be done has to do with the infrastructure. We talk about the pop-down facilities that we have in some schools, facilities that are just not up to the level and the standards. Sir, we took the time last year in 2024 to put the call out to architects of this country to ensure that they were able to come up with 21st century designs that will suit the kinds of environments that we need to create now, environments that are climate resilient, environments that are water smart, environments that use the indoor and outdoors, environments that allow us in significant ways to do more collaboration and working together. Sir, you went to school and you know that you had the chairs and tables in a row. If you are now going to do more project-based learning and more collaborative work, helping children to develop the ability to communicate and collaborate and to work as teams and to think critically, you need to organize the classrooms very differently. Part of the design, sir, of the new future-focused classrooms and schools and environments have to be a part of how we do infrastructure, not just how we repair them, but how we actually build them from scratch. And there is currently, the Prime Minister referred to, there is currently on Bay Street, not far from here, the Oceanus campus that will be the blue-green campus here for Barbados as we start to look at project-based learning and to do education differently in this country, focused on climate resilience and other aspects of what we're doing. Sir,
You have been
could
given
go
5
on,
minutes.
but I will now, sir, pardon me, sir?
I gave you 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir, and I thank you very much for it. As I wrap up, sir, I want to say that you have to, I was an athlete, I was a track and field athlete for Barbados, used to run for Barbados, and one of the things that I learned when you're taking a longer race is sometimes you have to start more slowly so that you can go faster at the end. And if anybody in here has ever built a house, you know that you need to build a solid foundation. So before you see the pretty windows and the doors and the paint and the roof and all that going on, you have to deal with the foundational issues. And so the Ministry of Education over the last several years have been dealing with a number of the foundational issues. We have been dealing with curriculum review. We currently have a curriculum review consultant on board who is reviewing the curriculum with a view to making the curriculum more future focused. And by the way, sir, it is a Bajan company that is part of that consultancy. Also, sir, you have to deal with the Education Act. If you read the Education, sir, you are a lawyer. You know, sir, that the Education Act is out to choose.
Honourable member, I gave you 5 minutes.
Okay, 15. So now that is it. I am in my final minute.
No, the 5 minutes are going.
Okay, thank you. You have the Education Act now that has to be dealt with, and we have those consultants on board. Sir, there's a whole lot more foundational work. And I want to say, sir,
hold on a minute, Honourable. You are reminiscent of the Honourable member from St. Michael East.
And sir, I don't want that.
Please hold on.
I don't want that, sir.
Please hold on.
Okay, sir.
Hold on. Oftentimes, I have to beseech the honourable member for St. Michael East to land his helicopter. Your time for landing your helicopter has expired.
And I want to thank you, sir, and thank the constituents of St. Philip West for the opportunity to serve in this honorable house.
Honourable member for Christchurch East.
Sir, I, for one, have never seen the honourable member so animated. And if this is what budgets do for her, so we should have budgets every week. Sir, allow me to start by saying I want to thank the good people of Christchurch East, many of whom contacted me to weigh in on the budget as presented by the honourable member for Christchurch East Central, who presented what can only be called a masterful budget out of the top drawer. And the worst part of that, sir, is having been party and sitting and listening to a well thought out, well structured presentation of the policies of the government for the upcoming year and the budgetary proposals, we then immediately came crashing down from that height to the presentation by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. So I actually timed it. And I like horror movies, sir, and I thought to myself that if I had watched 7 horror movies back to back, I still would have had time left over to hear the end of the Leader of Opposition's speech. And his was reminiscent to me, sir, of actually, sir, a horror movie on slow-mo, where you watch it painfully and in detail, and you rewind at parts to watch it over. Sir, the Leader of Opposition effectively had nothing constructive to say, and he took 10 hours in which to say that. He extensively quoted from the play Julius Caesar, and he gave a full expedition on the role of Julius Caesar, Brutus, Mark Antony, whoever was in it, that I actually wondered, what are we doing here? He spent the first hour and a half talking alternatively about himself, talking about himself and talking about Julius Caesar and other philosophers. And he ended with et tu, Brute, that famous quote. Sir, and to be honest, I thought he should have abandoned Julius Caesar and gone to the Bible. And he might have found a more apt reference to start his speech with and perhaps adapt it to be et tu, Judas. But, sir, he insists on quoting Shakespeare. And as almost everybody has, they've come back with a quote for him. And this must be a learning experience, because I learned a lot from the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central on what to do and how to present. I equally learned a lot more from the Honourable Leader of Opposition in what not to do and how not to present. So I'm going to give him something, a quote, sir, that I hope he takes it to heart and learns from it, because it may guide him going forward. And it is that famous quote from Macbeth, sir. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his time upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. I just give the quote and the lines, and I invite anybody to read between them. What was painfully apparent, sir, was that the Honourable Leader of Opposition came with nothing new. There was nothing that he said in his 10 hours that we had not heard before. He cut and pasted and pulled from almost every other speech where his sole purpose is to attack what is being said as opposed to contributing anything significant. His cut and paste, sir, was so effective that at one point in time, he actually referred to the Honourable Member for St. Michael South as the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. And I thought to myself, that is particularly telling, because I might mistake other people's constituency, but I will never call anybody else in here the member for Christchurch East, because I know exactly where I ran, where I plan to run, and who it is I represent. But sir, I will not be like him. In practical terms, sir, his contribution was probably as useful as feathers on a fish. But I will actually go straight to some of what he said. I will refer, sir, some of what was said in the budget by way of explanation, and also debunk some of what was said by the Leader of Opposition, and I will get there briefly. He started, sir, with regathering, and the Honourable Leader lambasted regathering. It was a waste of money, it was a failed concept, it did nothing to generate any income, it did nothing at all. And he said it was so much a BLP party event that he was surprised people were not in red, and he realized that the BLP took a decision to camouflage itself, and persons at the first two events had on green, right? But obviously it was a ploy because we all had on green. So obviously he has not even bothered to find out what regathering is. He does not even know that parishes have colors, and that St. Lucy's color was dark green, jade green, and St. Peter's color was a lighter green. So the fact that he saw persons from the parishes, B's, D's, nobodies, tourists, everybody repping the greens, was not a ploy on our part. We're proud of who we are. We're proud of our party color. But persons came out repping their parish. Sir, St. Lucy, the first one, it was fantastic. It was amazing. It was an It was at what I now call the Archers Bay Amphitheater, because it was a concert second almost to none. It was well put on, well organized. Persons from St. Lucy came out at their market event. They sold, they operated the bars, they got commerce. And then we shifted from there and went on to St. Peter. And the market event was in Spikestown. Spikestown was burst. I have never seen that many people in Spikestown. The Honourable Member for St. Peter said he's never seen that many people in Spikestown. You couldn't find a park, you couldn't walk. People came out to participate in the Spikestown market event. I do not know what collision of confusion could cause him to call the regathering a failure. But you know what? If you don't go, you will never know. I leave that right there. If the Honourable Leader does not walk among his people, sir, then that they're not his people. And just helping him out in the future, I just want him to know that the color for Christ Church is orange, and that the color for St. John, I believe, is gold. So he could pick which one he wants to rep. Allow me, sir, to touch on some of the aspects that were raised as well that are practical implication for people, because I believe that a budget must have practical consequences for people. I will go to the deed of gift, the situation with the deed of gifts, the removal of the property transfer tax. A lot of us, sir, have heard people say, you know, I want to put my daughter on the deed. I want to put my son on the deed. Or they come to you as a lawyer and they say, look, put them down on the paper. And they don't understand it's not as simple as that, that a deed of gift, the process by which you convey your property to your child, is the same as a conveyance except no money passes. It attracts the same duties, it attracts property transfer tax, it attracts all of that. And when people hear that, invariably they stop. Because if you're honest with them and tell them, well, when you die, your son, if you want to leave it for him, he will get it without having to pay any taxes. And people invariably stop at that point, but they're not quiet because they want to see the boy benefit from it while you're alive. They want to see do something with it. They want to see put on a little house on it. Well, sir, this is of serious practical implication for all of those people in Barbados, especially the poor people in Barbados that want to put down the child on the deed while they're still alive. They can now do it without having to pay property transfer tax. So when you say nothing happen, that is a big one. But then, if you don't talk to poor people, you will never know what concerns poor people. So the removal of VAT on certain items. I heard some people asking, like, you know, why mandarins and why Horlicks and why whatever. And I think a lot of people don't understand that these are not the only items that actually have VAT removed. When people go in the supermarket and they pull things off the shelf, they may not necessarily know what does or does not have VAT. Somebody specifically said to me, why mandarins are not oranges? I told them, but oranges have the VAT off already. They said, but why Horlicks and not Milo? Milo got the VAT off already. Then they went and said, but you know, mandarins and things is rich people food. Who's actually eat mandarins? But sir, to be honest, that person obviously don't go to football. If you go to village football, they got a fella in yellow who sells fruit, grapes, mandarin. They sell mandarins as opposed to oranges because the mandarins easy to peel. You can peel them off real easy and eat them. So mandarins ain't poor people food no more. Mandarins ain't rich people fruit no more. Grapes are not rich people fruit no more. Bajans are eating, the average Bajan is eating grapes and mandarins. And you know what? If they're eating fruit at all, I'm happy. So let us make it cheaper and easier for them. That is a practical consideration, sir, for the average Barbadian. Sir, he then went on to CBC, and he accused me of presiding over the destruction of CBC, that I will go down in history as being the person that closed down CBC, and that the government has taken this decision to shut down CBC, and that CBC will be no more. Sir, obviously, he did not listen at all to what was said. Everybody accepted that CBC could not continue being run as it was before. The last government accepted it. From the time we came in, the Prime Minister made it clear in the manifesto we talk about restructuring state-owned entities. CBC was one identified from the very beginning. The intention was to restructure CBC. From the very beginning, it was there. Everybody said it should be done, it should be done, it should be done. Well, we're doing it. We are doing it now. And sir, if ever there was an example of walking hand in hand with the union and walking hand in hand with the workers, it was done in this exercise. You did not even hear the announcement of it. The announcement didn't come from government. The announcement that a deal had been struck and what the arrangements were didn't come from us in government. It didn't come from me as a minister. It didn't come from CBC as a board or as a corporation. That announcement was made by the union because the union was satisfied in themselves that they got the best deal for the workers. And the workers were satisfied in themselves that they got the best deal. Sir, I say this. My conscience is clear. At every step we walked and we heard the concerns. We were honest. We leveled. We showed the balance sheet. We showed how much it is that it costs us. We showed where the expenses are. We showed all of that. We exposed everything. There wasn't a subterfuge because we didn't have to. The case was plain. Everybody in Barbados knew it could not go on like that. Yeah. A joint statement was issued, sir. A joint statement was issued. This was no political anything. CBC's management and the union put out the joint statement. And you have heard nothing. You ain't hearing nobody going out there and saying we are disadvantaged, how the government could do this. Actually, sir, the bulk of the PR in relation to this was coming from the union. The union's social media. The union actually had a number of workers of CBC up on their social media. Persons saying, you know what, I can't hold this much money. Or I am happy, I knew it was going to come. I am happy and satisfied with how it played out. I am happy with how my union represented us. And some of them said they're happy with how CBC treated them. CBC is not shutting down. It is being restructured. It is being streamlined. It coming back leaner, meaner, cleaner, more resilient. And it is going to be digital. It is going to give the people of Barbados what they want in the way that they expect it. It is coming back bigger and better. Sir, and then the irony of irony, sir, is that when the Honourable Leader of the Opposition embarked upon his laborious, nauseating, ad nauseum, disjointed ramblings, the exact same CBC carried all. They carried every painful, torturous minute of it, all. We know, sir, that the position from time was that the presenter of the budget gets unlimited time and unlimited broadcast time. CBC has to carry all of them. And then in the response, the person responding gets the exact same amount of time as the person presenting, and then they're cut off. Everybody, up till this year, that has always been the case. Always been the case. The decision was taken. You know what? The man always quarreling, we unfair him. We don't want anybody to think we unfair him. We are comfortable in the sterling budget delivered by the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance. Let him have his whole say on it. We want to hear what his analysis of it is. We want him to pick it apart, because if he points out flaws in the budget that we can rectify, then the Honourable Member still has time to come back and rectify them, to give the people what they want. For those reasons, we decided to carry all. Sir, I have probably never regretted anything more in my life. We gave him the oxygen, sir, to perpetrate upon us the most horrendous torture since Nazi Germany. His speech apparently from the clerks of parliament was the longest reply to a budget in living memory. Nobody in the history of Barbados has ever taken that long to reply to a budget. Nobody has taken that much time to say absolutely nothing. Nothing. And you know what the joke is, sir? After he put all of us through that, you were here too, sir. We sat down here on Wednesday, on Tuesday night. We sat down here Tuesday night saying, you know what, he got finished because the rest of us got to speak. He running it late, but some of us got to speak. We had 4 people scheduled to speak after him. And then the message came on saying, all right, reduce to 3, reduce to 2, reduce to 1. We can slide in 1 when he finished. But the man wouldn't finish. The house had to break. The house had to break. He had no consideration for the person doing sign language. I don't know if the equivalent, sir, in sign language, sore throat, is cramped fingers. But whatever it is, he had no consideration for anybody else. And then he came back the next day. We figured, all right, you know, an hour. So we adjusted everybody's time. Everybody know, you know what we can do? We can shorten everybody from the half hour they're supposed to get down to 20 minutes and try to fit everybody in a marathon session. And he went on and on and on with no conscience whatsoever, ignoring the pain in our faces. He went on. To the point, sir, where I don't even know if there's a record. I don't even know if it ever had to happen before. But we had to suspend the standing orders and carry on for another day. And the worst part of it, sir, the worst part, after he went through 10 hours and he finished, what did he do? He promptly got up with all his crew and left. This has not been seen from, I'm not saying whether or not he's here. I'm saying I did not see him since he left. Right? Since he left. Sir, that is disrespect to the honourable members. And I will tell you this. He cannot even comment on anything said after. And I'm not surprised that he didn't actually want to hear what anybody else had to say, because he clearly did not even want to hear what the person presenting the budget had to say, because his reply had no reference at all to anything contained in the budget, and that budget was ripe for the picking. It had something for everybody. They had plenty detail in that budget. Not once did his speech and his ramblings collide with the substance of the budget. Sir, the other thing that bothered me and that has thrown Barbados into a little bit of confusion is his position on the dormant accounts. His position on the dormant accounts. And, sir, and let me not say it smacked of intellectual dishonesty. The honorable member made a point of saying that he's the lawyer with the most experience in this entire chamber, that he's a good lawyer, the most experienced, he knows the law. He beat himself on his breast and he pat himself on his back. Sir, obviously he does not know the position in Barbados in relation to dormant accounts. I'm going to summarize it in short form. As between persons who hold bank accounts or do business with banks and banks, that is governed by the Financial Institutions Act, Cap 324A. With respect to persons who have money unclaimed in a government institution, so that would be the registry, that would be BRA, that would be customs, whatever, that is dealt with by the Unclaimed and Undistributed Monies Act. And in both of them, the nutshell provision is this. Both pretty much boil down to the same thing. If you have money in a bank and you don't do any transactions with that money in that bank for 10 years, it is deemed to be abandoned property. The bank will then publish a notice in the newspapers and the Gazette saying persons with these account or these deposit boxes, whatnot, contact the bank. After they publish that, they turn the money over to the Central Bank of Barbados. And it goes from there, and the Central Bank of Barbados, sir, has the authority, if it is property, like jewelry in a deposit box or whatnot, they can auction that off within a certain period of time, and the proceeds from that are then passed to the consolidated fund. It's the same thing if the registry has money for you for judgment and you don't collect it within 10 years, they go through the same process, they advertise it, they then turn it over to the accountant general, right? And then on to the consolidated fund. At any point in this process, the person who owns that property, and when I say property, I mean money or money's worth. The person who owns that property can claim it, at which point the government has to pay it back to you. Even when it goes into the consolidated account, you have a total of 6 years from the first publication in the newspaper or the gazettes to claim your money. After that 6 years is gone, technically speaking, you can't claim the money. That is how it exists now. That's what it is. All we are saying, from the time that money hits the consolidated account, the government is free to do with it what they want. They're free to do with it what they want. They could go and buy electric vehicles, they could go and buy buses, they can do roads, whatever. What the honorable member did in his budget was say that, you know what? We have this resilience and sustainability fund, replacing the catastrophe fund. What we're going to do in order to help capitalize that and ensure that it gets a steady source of money when the year comes, up to 50% of the unclaimed monies, up to 50% of those unclaimed deposits or anything that went through that process, we can put in that fund, take from the consolidated fund and put into that fund. That does not mean that you can't get it back if before your 6 years has expired, you come forward and make a claim. It doesn't matter. Ain't that I taking up Ryan Strong money? Ain't that I taking up Dale Marshall money? Ain't that I taking up Indarware money? Be taking out of the consolidated fund an amount that represents up to 50% of that. If somebody in that point in time realizes, oh shoot, I had a bank account at Scotia, I ain't hearing nothing about it, and realize it has been declared dormant and the money has gone into the consolidated fund, you can still apply for your money. And if for some reason you are not satisfied with your application to the minister, then you can apply to a court on appeal. The money is not lost. Ain't that the government is taking away something belonging to people and they can't get it back. Once you claim your money within that limitation period that the law says, then if you can establish a right to it, then you can get it back. There ain't a highway robbery, there ain't a bank robbery. All it is that instead of the money being at large for the government to use for anything, we are saying as a discipline, we are going to guarantee that we use half of that in order to capitalize the fund for the benefit of all Bajans. I don't know if it could be any more clear than that. If the honorable leader of the opposition, as the most senior lawyer in parliament, did not understand that, then sir, I don't know what to say. then I don't know what to say. And in the same way, I could just go into the legislation and look for the terms, and try to explain to people. He could have as well. He had 24 hours. 24 hours to research and actually respond, but he picked at words and threw the fish and turned the whole of Barbados into a roar. But I say to the people of Barbados, hear me clearly, nothing has changed for the people of Barbados. Nothing has changed for the account holders. You still have the exact same access and right to your money as you did before. All that has changed is internally within the government, that we've identified those funds to use towards the Resilience and Sustainability Fund. Now, sir, I just want to briefly say, sir, in relation to the Prime Ministerial travel, and I don't even need to say much in relation to that, because you go where the money is. That's the reality. If I want something from you, sir, I'm not going to expect you to come to me and offer it. I will go to you and say, sir, I will let you to make a donation and sign on for my donation sheet. You have to go where the money is. You cannot sit down in Barbados or in a country and expect donors to come to you and say, we got free money, you want some? You have to present yourself, show you are a serious government, show you have plans, show you have policies, show that you are worth investing in, and then people will say, let us help you. The problem is, sir, they don't understand that. Why? Because nobody want to lend them the money. At the end of their term, nobody local, nobody overseas, no institutions, no grant funders, nobody was willing to lend the last Democratic Labour Party government a red cent. So of course they do not understand how it plays in the money markets. Sir, I am cognizant of the time, and they said it was actually going to be really, really responsible, sir. Really, really, really disciplined. What I would say, the honourable member kept saying, show me a democracy, I will show you a tyranny in the making. I said, show me the honourable leader of opposition, sir, I will show you somebody who takes a 6 for 9. Show me the honourable leader of opposition, sir, I was somebody who, you give them an inch and they take a mile. I am proud to have been here to hear the honourable minister in the Ministry of Finance deliver his first budget. I trust and hope it will not be his last budget. The Prime Minister said she reposed her confidence in him, but the reality, was it not for him? Was it not for the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central? The Prime Minister could not have the confidence to leave the country and go and do what it is she has to do to put Barbados on the map and to get us the funding. He is the person that handles the day-to-day financing aspects of Barbados. The fact that the honourable member thought it was disrespectful to him to hear a budget from the honourable member for Christchurch East Central. Well, sir, it was disrespectful to the honourable member for Christchurch East Central and all of us for him to sit down there, not listen to a word, and then come and talk absolute foolishness for 10 hours. Sir, it was a masterful budgetary presentation which factored growth, resilience, and humanity. The Honourable Leader of Opposition, having not troubled himself, sir, to address any specifics in the budget, then I am left to assume that the Honourable Leader of Opposition fully supports the budgetary provisions for 2025. And if that is the case, sir, then we actually finally agree on something, because I fully support budgetary provisions as presented by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central. I thank you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to weigh in on this excellent budgetary proposal. At the outset, I of course want to thank my constituents, the good people of the constituency of St. Joseph, and I remind my colleagues that the constituency of St. Joseph is made up of all of St. Joseph, a piece of St. John, a piece of St. George, a piece of St. Thomas, and a piece of St. Andrew. So when I thank the people of St. Joseph, I'm thanking the people of a very large geographical area and people with big hearts. Mr. Speaker, it is on them that anything that I do rests. And therefore, it is important for me to, and I do so now, express my gratitude for their continued support, prayers, and well wishes, especially at what is a difficult personal time for me. I have enjoyed the last 4 days in this chamber as we have had the benefit of some very erudite presentations, certainly from the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance in the Prime Minister's office. I've enjoyed a tremendous amount of camaraderie with him, obviously, in part due to the fact that we have an academic bond. But beyond that, I have come to respect his keen intellect. He is certainly one of the most down-to-earth and unassuming people I've ever met in politics. The Minister of Finance has absolutely no ears, is always approachable, he doesn't always return calls. But I believe that he was well prepared for the presentation that he made on Monday, and let me next therefore congratulate him. Who I cannot congratulate, however, is the Leader of the Opposition. Now, you normally congratulate people for making records, and he certainly has made a record. In fact, he's done what every strong athlete wants to do. He wants to break the record of his previous performance. The Leader of the Opposition has certainly done that. Last year's budget response was the longest budget response we'd had up to then in history. And now this one will probably be the longest budget response for all time. I did a little bit of Googling, and they said that in the UK Parliament, the longest speech lasted about 6 hours. For a person who is so anti-England, or so he pretends, I am more than disappointed that he should feel that he needed to beat a record set in the UK. Some people call it a filibuster. Filibuster, Mr. Speaker, is a verb that, if you check dictionary, it says to act in an obstructive manner in a legislature, especially by speaking at inordinate length. It is usually done to delay a vote. So the Honourable Member has had his filibuster, he has created his record, he has delayed the vote by 1 day. So Winston Churchill said to a parliamentarian once, "Come to the point, my boy. Come to the point by all means, but do not camp on it." The Honourable Leader of the Opposition came to the point and encamped himself on it for a longer period than he should have. Another writer said, a speech is like a love affair. Any fool can start one, but it takes a lot of skill to bring it to an end. So after the terrifyingly long speech of the Leader of the Opposition, a speech that was really properly 2 hours in length at best, but that he managed to dilute and dilate by another 8 hours, I feel that I'm obligated, through good sense and the goodwill of my colleagues, to be brief this evening. I'm reminded of a person who gave a long speech, and he said when he got home that it was moving, soothing, and satisfying. And when asked what he meant, he said, well, after the first 2 hours, people started to move out. After the next 10 minutes, he looked around and saw everybody sleeping. And as for satisfying, when he was finished, the guy walked up and said, well, I had a good rest. I think that sets out exactly what we were treated to over a 2-day period. I wouldn't dwell too much on the Leader of the Opposition. He did what he felt he had to do. One newspaper called it repetitive and rambling, and I don't think I can add any greater critique than that. But I must say that I have to set the record straight. You see, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition used his 10 hours to vilify this government, to lay charges of corruption against us. What gall. And one of the things that he highlighted when he said he was now going to focus on my ministry, well, if that was a focus, I'm really sorry, he should come back and do another 10 hours, because he was repetitive and rambling and said very little about the office of the Attorney General. And what he did say was downright inaccurate. I wouldn't call it a lie, that would be unparliamentary. But he began in his critique of the leader of the office of the Attorney General, and he alleged that my ministry paid a consultant $1.7 million to do Startwise. And that this consultant was somebody who was already a consultant at government headquarters. Leader of the Opposition said that that person was already getting paid by government, that he received a private contract from government while getting a government salary. So essentially he was saying that there is an individual who is on the payroll of the Ministry of Finance, and in order to execute a program called Startwise, we paid that individual $1.8 million. If that were true, I would take my licks. I would give the Prime Minister my resignation, and I would move on. But it is so completely untrue that I really wondered whether I should bother to respond to it. But you see, the public has heard him say, and it has been repeated in one of the dailies. So I think it is important for me to set the record straight. He got the amount more or less right. Yes, this ministry, the Office of the Attorney General, did do a program called Startwise. Yes. And we paid the entity that did it $1.8 million. He also got right that this particular project, this particular program was to train individuals. But we paid no consultant who worked in the Ministry of Finance or who worked anywhere else for that matter. Startwise is a United States company that focuses on training individuals for the emerging job market. And back in 2023, the Honourable Prime Minister in a budget speech said that we were going to get into an arrangement with Startwise to train Barbadians, and they were expected to get jobs in the region of $5,000 a month working in the offshore market, but working domestically. Mr. Speaker, the Startwise program was originally intended to train 2,000 people, but as a prudent government, we said, well, hold on a minute, let's do a pilot first. That pilot did cost us $1.8 million, Mr. Speaker. But it trained 200 young Barbadians. Now let's do the math. Let's do the math. $1.8 million divided by 200 heads, 200 Barbadians, is $9,000 a person. That included equipping them with a proper laptop computer. And the rest of the money, therefore, was to have the individuals trained using overseas facilitators and so on. So there was a cost to this. Mr. Speaker, the young Barbadians who received the training, all of them have not got work, but some of them did. And anytime we are asked as a government to make an investment of $9,000 in a young Barbadian to put them on a good footing, Mr. Speaker, that is money well spent. $9,000 on a 6-month program, getting a computer, giving them the discipline, the skills that they need. And the Honourable Member wants to come in here, as he has, and try to suggest that there was some nasty arrangement and that some consultant in the Ministry of in the government headquarters got the money. Not a cent, sir. If you remember check, you will see Startwise registered. Startwise has its own website. It's an American company. He can see who the people in it are. Not one of them is a Barbadian. But it doesn't matter who they are or where they came from. What matters, Mr. Speaker, is what the project was for. But he wanted to suggest that we were up to some monkey business and putting money in a consultant's pocket. But Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition really must reflect on the history, the sordid history of the people that he's now gotten into bed with. One of them, a lawyer, sent the government a bill for $1.6 million for work that he never did. Had the gall to write me and tell me this is his fee. I said, well, did you collect a cent of the money? No. What did you do? He went to 2 meetings. Did not do a stitch of work. And what's worse is that he was only asked by the Minister of Finance of the time to serve on a committee to look at this thing. Can you imagine that? You ask a man to serve on a committee and he sent a bill for $1.6 million. Suppose everybody in the committee sent a bill for $1.6 million. How absurd. That is the kind of thing that characterized 10 years of government under them. Characterized their administration. But he would want to sully the efforts, the legitimate efforts of this administration by spreading untruths. Mr. Speaker, that is his currency. And he heaps it with flowers and flowery speech. But at the end of the day, it is just plain untruth. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member also spoke about the Commissioner of Police and suggested that we did some pernicious deed by having the Commissioner of Police in the well. I don't know if it resonated with anybody, but I feel I have to explain what governance is about. Governance, Mr. Speaker, is in significant measure about accountability. And yes, Section 8 of the Police Act does say that the Commissioner is responsible to the President for the efficient administration and governance of the force, of the service. Yes, that's what it says. The Honourable Member's approach to governance is really very academic and formulaic. The Commissioner of Police keeps press conferences to tell the people of Barbados what he is doing and what his members are doing on I think once every 3 months or so. Why does he not tell the Commissioner, don't do that? You're only accountable to the President. You're not accountable to anybody else. What are you giving a press conference for? Can you imagine how absurd that could be? You know, the Honourable Member likes to talk about sheep. I do not represent that belly sheep. I represent approximately 7,700 human beings. And each of us in here represents human beings. We are the representatives of those individuals. And therefore I can see absolutely nothing wrong with a police commissioner or any other member of the police I command making himself available to this chamber to discuss general policing matters. Nobody asked about there were no details sought. Nothing that he was asked to reveal went into the inner workings of the police service. Nothing of the sort. There were simply questions dealing with general approaches to policing as it relates to our respective ministries and our constituencies. And that is being accountable to the people through their representatives. But instead he would like the Commissioner to say, no, I'm not coming. But you know, the Commissioner came here to answer any questions that we might have on crime. The Honourable Member didn't ask him any. Didn't ask him a single question. He didn't ask me any questions. He didn't ask the Commissioner any questions through me. So he had a perfect opportunity to get all the information that he needed. He wouldn't get details, of course not, but he had the opportunity to talk about policing generally. There's so many things that he could have talked about. But instead, he did not seize the opportunity and seeks to castigate us here. We are a government that has prided ourselves on accountability and on transparency. The Commissioner of Police did not object to being here on the basis of some strict technical interpretation of an act. I believe he welcomed the opportunity to engage. If the honourable member, the leader of the opposition, did think it was wrong, well, he would really have to show me what about it was wrong. But I don't think that there's anything that we could consider inappropriate or unlawful about the exercise. Our views differ as they do on most things. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that his criticism was empty. He also alleged that the government has lost the support of the police service. You know, this caused me to lose a lot of sleep last night. And I want us in this chamber to reflect on what the honourable member says. The government has lost the support of the police service. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is so worrisome. As far as I'm concerned, the Barbados Police Service has to be independent. It cannot, in the operation of it, in its operations, have any regard for who is the government or who is not the government. In fact, we say that there is one government. There's a continuity of government. It can't have any regard for which political party is in or out. That's not how our system works. But his comment reminded me, Mr. Speaker, of the attitude that his administration had back in the early part of their 10-year period. Because in 2013, and the opposition should know this well, in 2013 they sent the then Commissioner of Police on administrative leave. The then Commissioner of Police had given recommendations for promotions, and his deputy gave another set of names, and they took the deputy's names. The Barbados Police Service was in a state of chaos because the last administration felt we need to have the police supporting us. That's what they felt. And therefore they reached their grimy hands into the bubbles of the police service and started to pull about people and push about people and double promote here and double promote there and do all kinds of things because a certain individual and others would frequent George Street. That was how they saw the police service. They saw it as an extension of the Democratic Labour Party and that it should be the puppet of the Democratic Labour Party. In fact, the chairman of the police, was it the chairman or one of the influential members, was the general secretary of the Democratic Labour Party at the time. That is how they wanted to run the Barbados Police Service. Now, Mr. Speaker, the honourable members should know it well, because at that time, during what was the Night of the Long Knives, the honourable member was engaged by about 15 senior police officers who said, what they have done to me is wrong. I want you to put them in court. He took the brief. He took the brief. He won. The individuals got damages. The honourable member challenged the politicization of the police service back then and won in court. But no one wants to come in here and suggest that we should somehow be trying to curry favor with the police service. Mr. Chairman, our job, our responsibilities in administration is to pass laws for the peace, order, and good government of Barbados. It is not about getting the support of the teachers' union or the teachers, or getting the support of the nurses, or getting the support of the sanitation. We have to run an entire country. Yes, we want individuals to support the things that we stand for. We want individuals to support the measures that we take on their behalf. That's what we want. But your member seems concerned that any particular government department should support the government. But that's not what that is a perversion, an absolute perversion of what governance is. This administration has kept faith with the police service. They have a budget now that is the largest ever in its history. There is nothing that they have asked for that we have not given. And in fact, In fact, in this budget, we have sought to make extraordinary arrangements through the advancement, the personal advancement of the special constables. And I don't know who talks to him, but certainly by Monday night, I was getting WhatsApp messages from several police officers, some at the junior level and some at the senior level, who said, AG, I apologize for messaging you on your phone. I got your number from so-and-so. I'm a member of the force. They still call it the force, you know that. They'll get over it in time. And I want you to know that the transitioning of special constables is a wonderful thing. That is what we've come and committed to today. We've also agreed to increase the number of special constables by another 60. That is a significant injection into the police service. And Mr. Speaker, the entry requirements for a police officer is a certain number of CXCs. A special constable, lower entry requirements. Okay? But there are men and women who want to serve but may not be able to get into the service as a police officer, but they'll get in as a special constable. And we say that after 3 years of work, you should transition. Is it novel? Our approach is novel. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the Police Act today, the Police Act says that you can become a police officer, no matter, you may have 0 CXCs, but if you have served as a special constable for 3 years. That's what we've said. But you know what? The law permitted it, but we never did anything about it. We never put any arrangements in place. What we are saying, sir, is that at 3 years service as a special constable, you are able to transition, if you wish, automatically. That's the word, you know, Mr. Speaker. That the transition is automatic. Because under the existing arrangements, you can apply to join the service, but then you gotta go to training school. Now, a special constable who's worked in the trenches day and night, rainfall, sunshine, mud or sand, for 3 years, why should that individual have to go back to training school? You've had the best training in the world. You've had on-the-job training. And we admit that there are going to be some areas that you may not have had. You may just need to have a little bit of tuning, and we're going to make provision for that further training of you. But the difference between what exists now and what we're proposing is we're saying that so long as you agree your transition into being a member of the regular constabulary will be automatic, sir. Now let me tell you why this makes a difference. Special constables are hired on contract. They're police officers, they're members of the service, but they're hired on contract. So for those of us, the leader opposition wouldn't know, but you're paid from what is called professional services. Okay? You know, it's not a statutory emolument. So if special constable gets a particular salary and they stay at that salary band till they don't work, till they don't work 30 years later or 40 years later, everybody else will be getting increments and all kind of thing and getting promotions, not special constables. So it will happen in this instance, Mr. Speaker, that an individual who has been in the service for 10 or 12 or 15 years as a special constable, when he transitions, he will not be getting the $2,800 a month anymore. His salary may actually double. That is what a government that cares about people makes available to them. Opportunities for permanency, opportunities for self-advancement, opportunities for self-respect, and to hold your head up high and be able to walk in the bank and say, that is my appointment letter. This is my paycheck. In the last budget, and it was covered in the press, we committed to putting certain arrangements in place. We have already paid all the detectives their allowances. Putting the additional individuals on the public officers loan scheme, what is called the POLTA. That has not happened yet. I'm assured by the public service that cabinet paper will go this week. The matter of the senior constables, There have been some complications, and that is being resolved. I anticipate that will be resolved shortly. But Mr. Speaker, we have committed to it. We've already completed one of the measures. The other one will be before Parliament when we next sit, I expect. And thereafter that will be settled, and there will just be that one last one to do. This government is holding faith, not because we're trying to get the support of any particular service. Barbados is not the kind of place where you got to worry about coups and you got to keep these people happy or those people happy. That is not us. That's not who we are. We want the support of every Barbadian on the basis that what we are doing is beneficial for them, on the basis that what we're doing is the right thing. Mr. Speaker, we have already started the construction of dorms at the Regional Police Training College to allow us to bring in more police officers. And, you know, we are looking to improve the conditions of the police service in every measure. We're looking to improve their physical conditions. And therefore, we've bought the Geddes Grant building, and it is being gutted as we speak, so that a significant section of the police will go into fully modern conditions. And there are other initiatives like that. We are committed to that. And one of the members from St. Philip, I don't remember which one it was, but I heard somebody speak earlier about crime in St. Philip. Let me say to you that you are going to get a proper new police facility in the Six Roads area. It has been long in coming. Yes, I admit that. But recognizing the significant population base in St. Philip, we accept that the existing District C police station cannot service that constituency or the other areas that it might, part of St. John and so on. So a new facility is needed. And very early in the coming financial year, my ministry intends to go by way of a competition to select a design so that we can get cracking on building that facility. Soon and very soon, I expect you'll be able to see significant progress being made, and I hope that the three members for St. Philip will be satisfied. But, I'm being prompted. It wouldn't just be a police station. It is going to be a civic facility reminiscent, to use the speaker's word, of what is currently the Airholder complex in Horse Hill. Okay, so you're going to have a fire station, you're going to have a post office. In fact, I expect that because the Ministry of Home Affairs will take up so much of it that he will gladly help to pay the bill and take some of it off of my shoulders. But Mr. Speaker, it is being done because we are concerned about the conditions under which people work. We are concerned about their ability to service the public. And both the public and the officers need proper accommodation. But you see, the Honourable Member Leader of the Opposition sees the police as something that should be partisan. Well, I will rail against that every day of my life with every breath that I have. A police service is to protect and serve. It is supposed to serve all of Barbados. When a gunman shooting, he don't ask if you're wearing a red shirt or blue and yellow shirt. When somebody going to rob an enterprise, they don't first walk in and ask, are you a B or are you a D? Crime doesn't work like that. It affects everyone. And therefore, I'm very disappointed in the way in which the Honourable Member has suggested that there's some issue of support, but again, I think he's completely misled himself on these matters. He's alleged that we have relationships with the criminal element. I've never heard anything so laughable in my life. Never heard anything so laughable in my life. But I would first urge the Honourable Member, before he points his finger at us, to remember that the other three fingers are pointing back at him. The other three fingers are pointing back at the Democratic Labour Party. It wasn't this Prime Minister who got searched by the police coming out of a dub one night. They have a long history of the very thing that they want to accuse us of, because it is convenient for them to accuse us of it. They can't say that we're not putting resources and putting effort and energy and novel ideas into the issue of crime fighting. So what he wants to say that we're in bed with the criminals. It is laughable, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine that this is the administration that has made the life of the criminal element in Barbados so miserable? None like this one. And we could be in bed with the criminals. Talking about garrison constituencies. Mr. Speaker, we have tightened up all of the criminal legislation. We have passed a new bail act to make it harder for the criminal element to get bail. New Sexual Offences Act to increase the fines. The Firearms Act, we've tightened up that in a significant degree. We've brought faster trials, more judges. Does this sound like an administration that is in bed with criminals? Well, I hear that there's a hit out of me. You behave. Mr. Speaker, this is a place for serious debate. There's no point coming into this chamber and spending 10 hours and hurling things and hoping that something will stick. That is not what this parliament is for. He alleged also that we are in a constitutional deficit. Well, he says he's the best lawyer in parliament. Well, that's all right. That's all right. That fella must blow his own trumpet. He just happened to blow his for real long. No, Mr. Speaker, there is no constitutional deficit in Barbados. The honourable member is so hung up on this concept of a Republican constitution, but he's never taken the trouble to say to the chamber, what is it? What is it? Does it come in a green box with a ribbon? Does it have wheels? What is it? You know, the honourable member is so fixated on this concept of a Republican constitution that he really ought, when he had the opportunity, he ought to have engaged the Constitutional Reform Commission and spoken to them about it. I have inquired. You remember, Mr. Speaker, that when the honourable member became leader of the opposition, the work of the Constitutional Commission was about to be finished. It was wrapping up. The Reform Commission had already met with the Democratic Labour Party. But it was felt that a new leader of the opposition, since there was none at the time, should be done the courtesy of a meeting. They wrote, no response. They wrote again, no response. They called, no response. They called again, no response. Could not get a response from the leader of the opposition to the question of when can we meet with you. And then when they did reach him, he set a time when he put it off. Set another time when he put that off too. And eventually he had a meeting with them. And then reliably informed that he asked 2 questions. Not one of them had anything to do with the Republican Constitution. He didn't advance anything about the Republican Constitution. And had he done so, it would have been reflected in the report of the Commission. The report of the Commission is here. He had a perfect opportunity to advance these things, didn't take it, and wants to come in here and pillory this administration. There is no constitutional deficit. If you ask the honourable member of the opposition to put 10 characteristics of Republican Constitution on the table now, no, in fact 10 is too many, put 5 and see what he would say. A constitution has a Bill of Rights, ours does. A constitution deals with the structures of governance, ours does. It sets out who is parliament, who is the head of state, who is in charge of the army. All of these things, ours does. If he had taken the trouble to look, he would have discovered that the Commonwealth of Dominica, which is a republic, sir, had its constitution in 1978. Trinidad and Tobago, not a republic, their constitution 1976. And when you look at them, they are remarkably similar to ours. Remarkably similar to ours. Because our governmental structures are essentially the same. They're basically the same. The Bill of Rights the same. But he wants to tell the people of Barbados that we need to have this thing called Republic Constitution as if it is the difference between a bicycle and a truck. All his trucks. But he's heaping this fallacy on the people of Barbados. Mr. Chairman, this government has worked hard since coming to office. We've had a few hiccups along the way. Everything that we did not work out the way we wanted on every occasion. But by and large, Mr. Speaker, this country is benefiting from the hard work of our Prime Minister, the hard work of our colleagues, but most of all from the hard work of Barbadians. The Honourable Member wants to spend 20 minutes talking about regathering. 20 minutes. Mr. Speaker, our economy is a $14 billion economy. You know what the budget for regathering is? $7 million. We have a $14 billion economy, and over a 2-day period he wants to devote 20 minutes to talk about regathering, which costs $7 billion. Now let me remind the Honourable Member, because he has to own these things, you see. In 2016, our economy was $9 billion. And the then administration decided they were going to spend $5 million to celebrate the 50th anniversary of our independence. See the math, sir? In 2016, the economy was $9 billion, and they spent $5 million to celebrate independence. Today, our economy is $14 billion. Little more than it would have been twice what it had then. And we have committed $7 million on a year-long exercise to uplift Barbadians, to uplift our Barbadian communities, to bring about a sense of wholeness and belonging. That is, you know, this could well have been put in the National Peace Program. Because anytime you do activities to strengthen communities, to increase the feel-good value of our country, then you're talking really about crime prevention too. But you want to complain about regathering? Well, we're gathering whether he comes with us or not. I'm going to wrap up shortly, Mr. Speaker. Let me say I support the exemption of property transfer tax in the instance where individuals are, by way of deed of gift, transferring land to their dependents. The Minister of Finance will confirm that while the text of his budget speech says for 3 years, he will confirm that that is in fact an error, that 3-year thing related to something else. And therefore this exemption of property transfer tax will go on indefinitely. Mr. Speaker, this kind of initiative is very important because I know that you have clients who want to transfer a piece of real estate. It ain't gotta be big. You know, this helping poor people and rich people, you know? Because it is the transfer tax, that 2.5% of the value, that makes the exercise of giving land, giving title to land so that a child or a grandchild or other dependent can go to the bank. It is that transfer tax that often prevents the transaction from going through. In one simple measure, we are going to be able to unlock the beneficence that is found in the hearts of many Barbadians, every family, and allow them now to do something to benefit a future generation. Well, they say that, you know, a country is developing when its elders plant trees under which they will not get to sit. Reflect on that, colleagues. You know, a country is developing when its elders plant trees under which they will not get to sit. That describes, Mr. Speaker, individuals who are looking not for today, but who are looking for generations to come who are looking to the future. These initiatives that we have put in place, Mr. Speaker, are going to trigger a series of benefits that will last generation after generation. Other generations, future generations of Barbadians will get to sit under these trees in the same way that all of us in here sat under the tree of free school meals, in the same way we sat under the tree of free school books, in the same way we sat under the tree of free university education. And that's what this administration is about, sir. Resilience for us is not just a today thing. When we seek to protect our coastlines, you can't go down there with a shovel and protect it tomorrow. You're looking at a series of multi-year, sometimes multi-generational activities in order to secure a future for another generation of Barbadians. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to be in this party, and I recognize that I may not get to sit under many of these trees, but Mr. Speaker, I will use every ounce of my energy to help plant them. And that's the exercise that we are engaged about in this chamber. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to begin by saying to you that I sincerely enjoyed the contribution just now of the Honourable Member for St. Joseph, who I believe has kept the passion concealed into these very late stages of his political career. Mr. Speaker, sir, I feel a sense of compulsion to congratulate the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, sir, on what really was an exceptional innings. I have seen at least 20 odd of these budgetary presentations and proposals during the course of my tenure in this place, sir. And I do not think that my recollection of history can tell me that there has been any other occasion when either side, replying or government side, has called up a substitute opening batsman and the substitute opener has scored a maiden test century. And I feel compelled to congratulate him for that. I also feel, Mr. Speaker, sir, that my recollection of history does not take me to a place where I can recall at any time a Prime Minister being so enthusiastic and satisfied with a financial statement on the part of a member that that Prime Minister has indicated that they would, in short order, fire themselves so that that member can assume the portfolio of the Ministry of Finance. And Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to speak truth because that young man had distinguished himself exceptionally well on the floor of this House. I also feel, Mr. Speaker, that I must, as I now speak last in this procession, that I can confidently say that the government benches as a whole distinguished themselves in their contributions in this place. And I want to congratulate all honourable members on this side. Now, sir, on the other side, I really do not know what to make of it. Never before do I recall in the history of the time that I have been here, sir, seeing any leader of the opposition behave in such an ill-mannered and offensive way. Because it has been the tradition of this Parliament, sir, that while we may be robust in our confrontation from time to time, there are courtesies that are applied, and one such courtesy, sir, is that you don't just stand and make charges, but you sit and hear the response. So, in that regard, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South has been an abject failure and has departed from all of the established traditions of this Parliament. Let us be clear on that. The unfortunate thing beyond that, sir, is that that which he subjected us to was really an awful and monotonous, rambling diatribe. And I'm being as charitable as I can, Mr. Speaker, sir, in that. And I know that it angered some of my colleagues. I distinctly recall my friend, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, expressing his own anger, and I believe the Honourable Member for Christchurch East as well. And I say to them that they must be calm, sir, because if it is one thing I've learned in these 20 plus years around this place, is that one ought not to ascribe to malice those things that are perhaps best described as rancid and unapologetic ignorance. The Honourable Member, sir, washed this place with that type of ignorance. And as I said, sir, I feel that one ought not to become enangered by it, but rather to become a little bit sorry. It is the book of Luke that teaches us, sir, that while Christ hung from the cross and looked down on men gambling for his clothing, hung from a cross and watched men jeer and cheer, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And the Honourable Member for Christchurch South has made it abundantly clear, sir, that he knows not about public finances, he knows even less about public policy, and he is entirely unapologetic about that. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is a matter not for me. That becomes a matter for the Democratic Labour Party, because the Democratic Labour Party have chosen to embrace him and that which he carries with him. And therefore, sir, it is a matter for them now to decide whether they are satisfied that their party, the house that Errol Walton, the most excellent, the right excellent Errol Walton Barra built, is to be now desecrated in this way. It is for them to decide, sir, whether a man comes to the Parliament of Barbados dripping only with personal angst and malice against the Prime Minister and has nothing else to do for 10 hours than launch attack after attack after attack on one individual in Barbados, without connection at all with a single policy in a budgetary proposal, sir. The Democratic Labour Party has to decide whether that satisfies them. And equally, sir, they must decide whether that party is now to be reduced only to being a utensil. The equivalent, sir, the equivalent of a political potty, a pole, fit only to carry the verbal diarrhea of he who sits upon it. Now, Mr. Speaker, for us, there is a duty to continue to govern. And Mr. Speaker, sir, as we extend ourselves in this duty of continuing to govern, we have to be mindful, sir, that there is a responsibility that we carry to be very candid with the people of Barbados about some of the things that were said in here, even though we may, as I come to this place, sir, be responding with a heart full of mercy and pity. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, and I told him this before, but I say it publicly, correctly, in my view, located a large part of what must be the response to this budget on the part of the Member for Christchurch South in the comments which he began with shortly after he left the first hour of rambling. He went to Thomas Hobbes. Mr. Speaker, I believe it would have been in 1588 that there was an English philosopher called Thomas Hobbes. And Hobbes, sir, had a very interesting, if not perverse, view of humanity. Hobbes felt, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it was his perspective that human beings outside of rigorous social construct and the application of force to keep them in line, sir, would function in what he called a state of nature, the natural state of mankind. And that natural state of mankind, sir, will be that people are predisposed to being vulgar, that they're predisposed to being incivil, that they're predisposed, Mr. Speaker, sir, to being uncouth and uncultured, violent, evil, beneath contempt. And then he went, sir, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, to say that that is the way in which he sees Barbados today. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, this Parliament has been around in 1639. And I want you to recognize, sir, that that which came from a man of black working class origin in this country reflected a philosophy that those who haunted these premises back in 1639, sir, well, not these premises, but nearby, because this was built after, they had the same philosophy about people who they enslaved, that they were not human, beneath contempt, predisposed to incivility, predisposed to vulgarity, predisposed to being uncouth and evil. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think that I stood in this parliament for the last month and I saw some hangers-on come in here. Forgive me if I digress, sir, but it is relevant. I saw some hangers-on come in here and I observed at the dining table on more than one occasion, Mr. Speaker, sir, people who come to your house as visitors to your house, sir. On one occasion, I saw one push you one side to grab 2 plates out from a dining table to serve themselves. Push you one side in your own house, at your house's dining table, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I believe that I understand incivility when I see it. I believe I understand it, Mr. Speaker, sir. And those hangers-on were guests of the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. And if I misrepresent in any way, Mr. Speaker, haul me in like a pop kite. Haul me in. But Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't think I misrepresent that which I witness. No, Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that I take exception to that characterization of the people, the young people in my constituency. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, I can say on your behalf that you would take exception of that characterization of the young people in your constituency, that they are predisposed, any foolishness about being predisposed to being uncivil and uncouth. And Mr. Speaker, we got to talk about this. Because as I said to you, I believe that it is appropriately located in this question of what Barbados is today, what we see manifested with the young people in Barbados today, specifically the question of crime in this country today, and the society within which they live today. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the assertion was also made in the same breath that the interventions made on this side, and I was one of them, I confess, that the idea of solving the social problems of Barbados only by lick and lock up, as we have come to call it, is inappropriate. And he has a difficulty with that. So I can only assume, therefore, sir, that the social problems as prescribed and diagnosed now by the Democratic Labour Party must now be resolved by more locking up and more licking. And let us subject this to some scrutiny, Mr. Speaker, sir, because in many ways, Mr. Speaker, this house has carried a characteristic of being a lazy house. In 1989, a black boy from a Barbados ghetto invited this country to reflect on itself and on the way its young people were feeling and being treated and how they were behaving as a consequence, sir. In 1989, that's 36 odd years ago. This house has never investigated that. And let me therefore condescend now to some particulars. I'm talking about a young man that we've come to know and love called Little Rick. I'm talking about a song, Mr. Speaker, sir, that was called Me Nah Know How the Youth Get So. I don't know if you remember it, Mr. Speaker. Me nah know how the youth get so. Me nah know how the youth get so. Not the youth nowadays like the turn idiot, sniffing coke, hitting rock. You remember it, Mr. Speaker? This country laughed, this country danced, but this country did not investigate. And it is as relevant then as it is relevant now, Mr. Speaker. And I grow tired of this neo-colonial absurdity that the solution to the social issues facing us, and let me say earlier, Clark, I have no problem being tough on crime. But like the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, I share the philosophy that you got to be tough on the consequences of crime. Yes, I am easily persuaded that you have to be tough on crime. But let's talk for 5 minutes about the need to be tough on the consequences of crime, Mr. Speaker, sir. And this neo-colonial construct that you beat down a black man or a black boy until he learns to love his blows, until he learns to raise his morale. Beat him until his morale improves. Beat him until he feels better about himself and those who beat him and those who beat him down. I consider that to be absurd, Mr. Speaker, sir. Equally absurd is that you lock him up until he learns to love the walls that confine his spirit. I have a difficulty, Mr. Speaker, sir, with a country and an approach in which that is the perspective that we are going to offer. But we offer that perspective, sir, because we have not invited ourselves to take the time to bend our minds, and I invite your house now, sir, to do that. Because I ain't come here, I ain't been around here long enough now, sir, that I could afford to offend and go along home if those who I have offended feel I should go home. Mr. Speaker, sir, in 2018, and I'm grateful to the Ministry of Education for assisting the Cabinet of Barbados with this particular research that was shared with the Cabinet of Barbados by the Honourable Member for St. Philip West. In 2018, Mr. Speaker, sir, 2,984 young people sat the CSEC exams. 2,984, sir. And of those, sir, 161 got 0 passes. Not one subject passed, 161. 2,984 sat. But Mr. Speaker, that 2,984 represented only 70% of the students who were the total cohort brought into the secondary school system 5 years before. 70%. So that means, sir, that 30%, Mr. Speaker, or 1,294 were lost in the system. Where were they? Some, you would say, may have stopped down once. Some may have stopped down twice. Some may have stopped down 3 times. Some may have been superannuated out of the system altogether. The point is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that when the bulk of them came to the point of examination for CSEC, what we used to call the O-level exam, they were nowhere to be found. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, numerically, this country lost 1,294 that never arrived at examination, 161 that got 0 passes, Mr. Speaker, sir. And we got a total of 1,455 students that nobody asked about them. What is the plight of those 1,455 living, breathing souls, Mr. Speaker? And does this parliament not know, this Republican parliament, don't come in here and wash down this place with nonsense about the Constitution. Tell us about the society around which a Constitution must be built, Mr. Speaker. What about those 1,455 people that are lost? And every year, tell me, sir, whether this country can afford 1,500 young people being thrown into the street. Because next year, we want 1,500 more, so we get 3,000. Put another 1,500 on it, it got 4,500. Put another 1,500 on it and go on, Mr. Speaker. You have an army of people who you have failed as a society. I will be damned if I will remain silent on it. I will not remain silent on it, sir. And we continue to come in this place and put on fine garment and forget that the fundamentals have to be addressed, sir. I want to be talking about the crime, but I want us to talk about the causes of crime, because where are they to be employed? How has this country reached out to ensure that these people can function as effective citizens in Barbados? And should they not be given that opportunity? What are the social interventions that this government has put on the table that were scorned in here? That is spend money now, that other parliaments did not vote, to do some of the fundamentals. First of all, to emotionally heal those who are emotionally scarred by the view that they have been failures since they were 11 years old and consigned to the rubbish heap of history because they didn't get into a good school and life went downhill after that. So you have to do some emotional and wellness counseling. Then, Mr. Speaker, sir, you've got to do some guidance counseling as well, because nobody has been reaching out or working with them. They have been lost in the system, a statistic. They have a heart, they have blood, they have lungs, they breathe, they walk, they talk, but they are a statistic only in the eyes of this system, sir. A little black boy consigned to the rubbish heap of history at 11, and maybe even before. And then, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to talk about adult literacy programs, because many of them may not even have been able to functionally be literate. And then, sir, we got to teach them financial literacy so that they can effectively live in this society. And then, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to be in a position to make sure that they understand a little bit about small business development, because we know that in this country, sir, unless you come out of a Harrison College, Cormier, Queen's College, or the so-called elite with some paper in your hand, nobody is seeing you when you come through the door. And that, I would have thought, would occupy a Democratic Labour Party leader if he can talk for 10 hours. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, every cent in intervention of that type is money well spent. And I have no apology for saying that, sir. And we have a simple choice in this country now. Let us write off swaths of our humanity, according to the Democratic Labour Party and the Thorn, or let us reinvest in the young people of this country, according to the Barbados Labour Party's philosophy. And I choose the latter, Mr. Speaker, and I make no apology for saying that. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I came here to talk straight talk today. A lot of long talk about travel. Let me tell the leader of the opposition that when we came to government in 2018, we found a state of affairs in which every minister of the Democratic Labour Party government, when he traveled overseas, sir, traveled first class. First class. There is not a member of this government who has been in cabinet since 2018 who has sat first class in an airline going anywhere in the world. All of that was put to an end. All of that squandermania was put to an end. There's no member of the government, including the Prime Minister, that travels first class. There was a thing called, Mr. Speaker, sir, spousal travel. And if you didn't have a spouse, I do not know how you managed to get a keep miss on the plane, but they used to have keep miss travel. Or keep man. No, I'm not laughing, sir, because it got to stop. It has to stop. It has to be brought to Christian understanding that there is a ruse, a game being played here. And if the Democratic Labour Party wants to be a plaything, it can be a plaything of the leader of the opposition if that is how they see themselves. But this government put a stop to all the spousal travel, all the first class travel. So let us now talk about the travel that does take place, sir. For the first time in history, I saw a Prime Minister. I've been about here for over 20 years, Mr. Speaker, sir. There is no Prime Minister of Barbados that has ever come and laid before the House as the Prime Minister of Barbados did last night. The entire dossier of her travel and associated cost. 7 years. For 7 years. There is no other Prime Minister in the history of Barbados who has done it. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the benefits. You know that as she sought to defend herself, she shortchanged the calculation of what was earned because of travel. I I don't even think the Minister of Finance in the ministry knows that. Because the Prime Minister didn't talk about trips to China. And that with the buses arrangement that we have put in place, sir, that there was, what's the figure? That with the buses, sir, it is $15 million in grant money for these buses. The stadium is another $40 million in grant money towards the rebuilding of the National Stadium, which must take it up 40 or 15, is 55 million. So it is no 120 million that was saved, sir, or earned by way of grant money. It is now rather, sir, $175 million in grant money. We're telling me at all. Huh? A good return. No, Mr. Speaker, sir. There's also the question of the geopolitical issues that arise. And that's why I come here to talk about. Because we live in a world, sir, where this is the age of shifting values. This is an age, Mr. Speaker, sir, where global Goliaths are at trade war. As recently as today, Europe was told that they will be confronted with 200% tariffs on alcohol and wines and spirits and so on that they're selling into the United States of America. 200%. And I say to the rum producers in Barbados, move swiftly, and make sure you get into the market, because when them carrying up the tariffs against one another, our little trilag will get sell faster and more foreign exchange for this country. Be nimble. That's the advice of the Trade Minister. Headlines, read all about it. Trade Minister advises you to be nimble. When the Prime Minister of Canada says that Canadians don't fly to the United States for summer, be nimble. Barbados is open for business. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, these are the things that we got to talk about in a world now where the new rule is might is right, and reason has been removed from her throne. We have to look at the context of some things. And that's what this government has done. The Prime Minister, in association with the Foreign Ministry, sir, recognized that, for example, small and micro states were the ones most impacted by the supply chain disruptions in COVID. Nobody can argue that. In fact, these travel and trade dependent economies of the Caribbean were among the 20 most negatively impacted countries in the world in terms of GDP decline as a result of COVID. And so, Mr. Speaker, so what was the strategy? The strategic response is to secure the presidency of UNCTAD, so that Barbados then, because we lived the experience, move fast to get in control of UNCTAD. And you know why? Because it allows us to be that thought leader, that voice on behalf of small and micro states like ours that says to the world, this is the difficulty that small countries are facing, and we have now to look at the way we do business and correct it in the interest of all these millions of people living in small states. That gives us influence, Mr. Speaker. You can't do it by sitting down here in Bridgetown. You have to go out there. Mr. Speaker, sir, I give you another example. The COVID experience was one where we would have lost access to medical supplies. We know that. We would have had difficulties in getting vaccines and so on. What is the strategic response by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in conjunction with the Prime Minister's office, sir? What is the strategic response? It is to secure the chair of the World Health Organization, One Health Global Initiative, to be a thought leader on these matters. To move the attention of the globe, the big powers, the manufacturers, sir, to let them know, look, you've got to deal with these small states differently next time there's a pandemic, the next time there's crisis. You can't do that, sir, by staying in Bridgetown, Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, sir, inheritance of the third most indebted economy while balancing debt. And at the same time, got to do hurricane preparedness and disaster preparedness, Mr. Speaker. And the strategic response you would have heard referred to last night when the Prime Minister let the country know that she is co-chair of the Development Committee of the World Bank and the IMF, and also chairman now of the V20, the vulnerable group of countries. They started with 20, it is now 70, Mr. Speaker. Barbados is the chair, and Barbados is leading the campaign of interrogation of these crisis issues against countries like Canada, the United States, Australia, Great Britain, Germany, etc. The thought leadership on behalf of the developing countries of the South is now being conducted by leadership from Bridgetown, Barbados. But Mr. Speaker, sir, you can't do that if you ain't prepared to get on an airplane and exercise yourself. But what is the benefit of that, you might ask, sir? The benefit of that, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'm being honest with you, we are also at the same time chair of CARICOM. And for the second time in the last 7 years, Barbados is now chairman again for the second time in 7 years. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the benefits of these things, I can itemize them. Silicon Valley came here. We just had a heads of government conference at the Wyndham a couple of weeks ago. For the first time in the history of CARICOM, Silicon Valley had representatives at a CARICOM heads of government meeting. And they were there, sir, to discuss the use of AI, artificial intelligence, in helping leverage technology for the advancement of public health care in the region, working with the University of the West Indies and the regional government, sir. For the first time, the African Exim Bank is in the process of acquiring land in Barbados so that it can establish a trade center. And Mr. Speaker, sir, that means business for this region, more particularly business for this country. Commitment to Barbados. You just heard one of the honourable members talk about CAF, the Latin American Development Bank. Sir, we are about to host the World Food Program Hub, the UN International Office of Migration. The Embassy of Panama opened here a few months ago. The Colombian ambassador would have presented her credentials here a couple of days ago to Her Excellency, the President of the Republic, sir. So they're about to open their embassy here. The Embassy of Mexico is about to open here, sir. And Interpol is opening an office, sir, at International Crime Prevention. It has already opened the office. And you have a leader of the opposition that stood in this parliament and drove a stake through the heart of this country's reputation. Drove a knife through the heart of this country's reputation, talking about how Barbados is corrupt. And Interpol, the leading crime-fighting agency of the globe, has chosen to open an office here. You think they'd be here, sir, if they felt that there was a smidgen of truth to that? No, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I feel we've come to the point now where the press has to hold this leader of the Democratic Labour Party accountable. Accountable, not just for walking out, because that's just bad manners. You got to hold him accountable for the things that he is saying and the injurious nature of the things he is saying with respect to the well-being of this country. And Mr. Speaker, sir, you asked me to talk to this country about the missions. And I want to say to you, sir, we all know, I think we heard it very recently, that there are over 200 nurses that would have come here from Ghana. And so therefore it is self-evident that the Ghanaian mission is assisting us in terms of our public health delivery. Oh, Kenya, sir. You know, the first thing I did this morning, sir, was to have a conversation with the Labour Minister in Kenya on the matter of getting some assistance, human resource assistance. I talked about it when I was in the well of the House. I don't remember I spoke about this when I was in the well of the House, but the leader of the opposition did not show up. And I said then, and I was saying now, sir, this country is redesigning our entire energy sector. The Minister of Energy and the Senior Minister responsible for infrastructure must have energy planning capacity. But there's nobody in Barbados to do the generation planning. There are no engineers that specialize in that we know about here. The power planning, Mr. Speaker, sir. So we have to find those skill sets elsewhere. And through the Kenyan mission, we have the Ethiopians now assisting us. Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan mission has engaged their central bank in Kenya with the central bank in Barbados. And you would have seen in the budget that there is a payment platform that is about to start in Barbados next year, it is, or later this year. Later this year. Collaboration, sir. Collaboration. The port of Mombasa in Kenya, a logistical expertise in an existing logistical specialty is what they possess. And Mr. Speaker, sir, we want our port to do a lot more by way of logistics. So there's a partnership there too. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the question of cultural exchanges and sports development, and we can go on. I don't understand what the angst of the leader of the opposition is about our relationship with Africa. Before I came to this seat to speak, sir, I left a meeting with the president of Sierra Leone, who is here as we speak. You heard the sirens outside, Mr. Speaker. That was the president of Sierra Leone arriving and then leaving, as he was here to discuss matters of closer cooperation with Barbados. And then he talked about the UAE. This budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, refers to a data center, a tertiary data center. But we are working on this with the leadership and the cooperation, the expertise of the United Arab Emirates. And Mr. Speaker, sir, what is it that we're hoping to achieve with that? To have Barbados as a hub, sir, for the production and distribution of digital identification services, not only for here, but for countries outside, across this region, Mr. Speaker. And that, sir, there will be integrated data services so that the Minister of Home Affairs, sir, through customs and immigration, and any of the other agencies interested in those services, will be able then, sir, to have access to the type of advanced passenger information and advanced cargo information and so on to ensure the better security of this country. What are we doing it for, sir? We're doing it to enhance our cybersecurity, sir. That is what the UAE's mission is working on, because the United Arab Emirates are specialists in this area. The Honourable Member for St. Philip South, the Minister of Agriculture, sir, we're working with him in order to make sure that we can get the assistance that he needs, sir, in order to deal with the chicken, the deaths of our chickens, sir, because of extreme heat. And the Saudis are specialists in that area, and we are working with him. Him is leading this house, sir. That is what the missions are doing. And it hurts that you can have a man who would want to lead Barbados, and all he can say about a mission is that he heard that they had a party there and somewhere in the UAE, and that some entertainer charged how much ever money he said the entertainer charged. Well, if a Barbadian entertainer went to the UAE, this minister does not know about it, but neither does this minister really care, because I do not involve myself in the minutiae. I do not descend into those little weeds. If there is a party there that is intended and designed to enhance the image of Barbados, I know how we got UNCTAD. I was the tourism minister who went to Geneva when we had to try to compete against the same UAE to be the chair of UNCTAD. And I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I organized for there to be a party in Geneva. And I organized, sir, for some young ladies to come up there dressed in their crop-over costumes. And I know that the men from the Middle East who were saying that they didn't want to vote for Barbados, when they hear the calypso strike up, when they start to drink the rum that was there, and they saw the ladies dancing, they came and said, Minister, everybody who is from the Middle East don't necessarily be Muslim. Minister, don't worry about it no more. The deal is settled. We like Barbados. We like what we see. You got to promote the country. You have to promote the country. And every country in the world uses its national assets. There are some who got enough money and they would buy the support that they want. We can't do that. So we have to creatively find that which we want. He talked about regathering, Mr. Speaker, so I'm not going to delay you much longer, because he asked me about the Cuban medical brigades, and I think the Prime Minister has answered that question. And in fact, only to say that the partnership with the United States is vital to us. They are a critical trade partner. They are a critical source market for tourism. The partnership with Cuba is equally vital to us, Mr. Speaker. The Right Excellent Earl Barra made a speech that indicated that we are friends of all and satellites of none. Everybody know that. What people fail to remember is that he also made the point that ours cannot and will never be a diplomacy of power. It is a diplomacy of development. And Cuba is a development partner for Barbados. When we were in our darkest hour in COVID, they had 223 nurses here, Mr. Speaker. They had them all across the Caribbean. And even though they're no more here, and we don't have any Cuban medical brigades here, we paid the Cubans the same amount of money as we pay anybody else. Nobody in Barbados can hold their passports or anything like that. And we will continue our discussions with the US. In fact, I have been notified, sir, by senior people in Homeland Security that when the statement was made, they did not have Barbados on the radar. And that is fine, I'm grateful for that. But let me also say that to the extent that they have other countries in the Caribbean on the radar, we still have a concern because the public health infrastructure of this region is extremely fragile. And therefore, we have to stand together and we have to make sure that we look after each other. Because if you have a collapse of public health in one country of the Caribbean, it will spread like contagion. Or there will be contagion. I think that is the correct way of putting it. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, we gather, and I will end here, because there's something wrong with a human being who comes from a country and would tell people, don't support a national initiative. You should be unpatriotic. You should not support a national initiative of the country you come from. I don't think I would ever have heard a Jamaican utter that which was uttered in this house. I can't imagine, Mr. Speaker, any American citizen that would utter that which was uttered by the leader of the opposition in this house. I can't imagine it, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'm going to make the flyer that he talked about, the inaugural Barbados Independence Gala flyer, a document of this house. It says, inaugural Barbados Independence Gala 2024, launch of the gathering 2025. It carries a tag at the bottom, sir, all the sponsors. You have Barbados, Mr. Speaker, BTMI. You got British associations. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. These are different groupings from around, some in Nottingham, some in Manchester, Sussex, Essex, wherever they come from, Mr. Speaker. Barbadian associations in the UK that come together to help finance this Independence Gala launch, because they're all Barbadian men and women, good and true. And on it is the logo of the Barbados Labour Party UK branch, which is an entity up there too. Well, Mr. Speaker, what is missing is the Democratic Labour Party UK branch. So the question isn't why the Barbados Labour Party UK branch was involved. The question is, why was the Democratic Labour Party missing? And this is the problem. Because there's got to be a point at which we end this charade, this foolish game. And let us understand we are Barbadians together. And Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a gorilla fund, but that is not a parliamentary word. There is a Napoleonic figure that has arisen in the north. And that Napoleonic figure in the North Atlantic does not care, Mr. Speaker, sir, if this little island disappear under the rock. That Napoleonic figure don't care if you dead tomorrow, sir. But we must stand together as Barbadians and leave the political tit for tat at the water's edge. We are bigger than this. We are better than this. And we may have come to this point, Mr. Speaker, sir, from different destinations or locations around the island and in different boats. But we are now all in the same ship. And that ship, sir, is called the HMS Barbados First. So I always say to the honorable member, sir, is if he really taking this thing serious, and I don't think he is, I think he's in here only to be a source of irritation for a lady he obviously has a deep degree of personal dislike for. And her very presence is the fact that she moves oxygen into carbon dioxide, sticks in his craw. But Mr. Speaker, sir, I made this document a document of the House, and I thank you for your indulgence, sir. I'm obliged to you.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that we do no suspend for a period of 10 minutes until 6:30.
The question is, Honourable Chairman, be suspended until 6:30. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chairman stands suspended until 6:30.